You're listening to Power Athlete Radio, a podcast dedicated to empowering your performance every damn day. Join former NFL pro and Power Athlete founder John Welborn as he dissects the greatest minds in strength, conditioning, and more. So whether your goal is to be the hammer, destroy mediocrity, or simply move the dirt, you've come to the right place. Now with the warm-up done, let the gains begin.
Hey, Power Athlete Nation. I want you to buckle up. We have a hard-hitting podcast today with Mr. Justin Wren. Talk about an interesting podcast and one that is more humbling than anything. But Justin's not only is a wrestler, MMA fighter, but primarily a humanitarian. 13 years ago, Justin went to Africa, went into the Congo, and has worked to save one of the tribes in the Congo, the pygmy people, and has really been the voice for the forgotten. And, not only oppression, slavery, and just living in extreme poverty, Justin has been the champion for these individuals. And it's nothing short of fantastic to hear the story, and both heart-wrenching in many ways. So not only a cool origin story about how he moved, into wrestling, got into MMA, and then started championing and becoming the big pygmy. So buckle up and tune in for a powerful episode of Power Athlete Radio. Justin Wren.
Yeah, well, there's two styles of wrestling. I mean, there's more than that, but there's the hard-nosed, in-your-face, like, I'm going to break you.
Yeah.
And that was more like Kenny Monday, my coach there. But Kendall Cross, a smaller guy, he would just out-slick you and be a little funky. And so in MMA, the wrestlers that come in, like a Bo Nickel, he's just ready to grind and beat your ass. A Ben Askren was more of the funk and slick, and he could dominate guys in MMA. But I think that there's two types of wrestlers that transition to MMA. The ones that are so excited to finally hit somebody. And that was me. Any match I lost, I was like, if I could have just thrown punches, I would have won this wrestling match.
That happens in jiu-jitsu all the time. We'll be in a position where all of a sudden I'm like, I could fucking cave his head in with this forearm.
Right. Yeah. And then there's the other wrestlers that they come over and they're so used to like out techniquing a guy that whenever they get punched in the nose, like it's a wake up call. We're like, oh, I don't know if I want to do this. And so my transition from wrestling to MMA happened pretty quick. I took my pro debut when I was 19. So in high school, I won a national championship.
So how old were you when you started wrestling? So 13?
I was 15.
15.
Yeah, I was 15. So it took me a year to find actually close to 2 years to find a good spot. So the school they first transitioned me to didn't have wrestling. And I started to actually wrestle with a club team before I went to Bishop Lynch. And that club team, well, my first state championship in wrestling is kind of a funny story because I wasn't supposed to be there. I was training with these guys that are on the club team that then qualified for state. And I go and I'm in the stands, and basically probably the last seed got injured, sick, something happened. And so the first seed, the guy that was in the finals the year before, that went to Bishop Lynch High School, were coached by these two Olympic gold medalists. He didn't have a match, so it was a bye. And so instead of giving any of the other wrestlers probably an excuse that like he didn't have as many matches, like give him an easy match. I was there. My club team coach had a great reputation in the state of Texas wrestling. He's like, hey, here's this guy, like let him go. And he had to talk with me beforehand. Hey, you have nothing to lose.
Sure.
I lost every match until that point by, I think my two best matches were losing by 1 point and then winning by 1 point. And so I had won one match before the state championship. So I didn't qualify at districts or regionals. And I'm sitting there. He's like, you've been going out on the mat so timid and you hesitate. You telegraph everything you're going to do. And that's why these guys know exactly what's coming. Now you have nothing to lose. Just go out there and just hit it. Just try. Just go for it. You have nothing to lose. So I went out there and I hit a lateral drop and actually put the guy on his back in the first round, first seed, guy that was in the finals the year before. I ended up sticking him, pinning him. And so I did that through the finals. And then that's when Kenny and Kendall came to my mom and dad and were like, hey, this sophomore is pretty good. And we want him to come to our school. It's 67. I mean, it's a long drive, but come try it out. So that happened. And that was one of those
amazing that they were willing to drive 67 miles, but you have people that won't even drive 5 miles. Like the best dude in the world is just around the corner.
Yeah.
And people are like, it's too far. I can't go.
Yeah, exactly.
Because like it's a kind of a hike to get to Shanji's place.
Right.
I go a couple days a week and people are like, man, that's such a far drive. I'm like, yeah, but if one of the best dudes in the world's up the street, I feel disingenuous not going up there. Yeah. I'm lucky that Victor and them are a little closer. I mean, they're pretty good too. So
yeah, for sure.
I'm good in that regard, but yeah.
And those guys are so great.
Yeah. They're Brazilian.
Yeah.
So like there's two camps of the Brazilians. There's kind of what I call like the laid back Brazilians. And then there's kind of like, I don't know, like the scammer kind of like hustler Brazilian dude. You see some of those guys but like those guys are kind of like, it's just kind of, but then you get them in the mat and they want to fucking kill you.
So my transition, and I agree. And I transitioned to MMA. Well, I, out of high school, went to the Olympic Training Center. I won a Greco-Roman national championship, so I'm there. But that was pretty short-lived. All of a sudden, my childhood dream became a reality. I'm at the Olympic Training Center. I was at both. There's one at University of Northern Michigan University, the United States Olympic Education Center, and then Colorado Springs. So I was going back and forth to both, got to live at both. And it was awesome. But then I had a match with an Olympic bronze medalist, a world champion, who's like probably my age now, 36, and I'm 18. And just a freak accident happened. We were falling out of bounds, or my hand was sliding on the mat. And then right off of it is like basically the squat rack, the rubber that's underneath. And when my hand hit that, it just stuck. And I don't know why they had that off that. That's probably one of the only times I've ever wrestled where right off the wrestling mats were those rubber mats that you stick into. But when my hand hit that, it just exploded. And I broke my elbow, dislocated it, tore the ulnar collateral ligament. Oh, wow. And I was laying on the mat with my arm completely behind my back this way, but that way. So my forearm behind my shoulder blade just snapped. Tommy John surgery. Yeah. And in that time, I got hooked on Oxycontin. Oh. So this was before we knew much about it. It's 2005.
These magic pills? Nobody's addicted to these.
Right. Well, I had 3 doctors just shoveling it to me. So it was 90, and 120, or 90 and 120, 120 every month.
I had the same thing. I mean, I remember getting injured and they gave me a bottle of these things with 93 refills or some crazy shit.
Yeah.
And I was like, I took one of them and I just threw the rest away. I'm like,
I wish I would have done that. I had to wait 4 months to get surgery.
Oh.
Because I had to battle with the insurance to get the right guy to do it. They were wanting to send me to basically an ankle knee doctor that did a few elbow surgeries a year. That guy finally, we petitioned or appealed 2 or 3 times. Finally, he had to write a letter and appear saying I'm not comfortable doing the surgery. He needs a world-class elbow surgeon because he's a world-class athlete. So that time, they told me I had about a 30% chance to ever compete again. I thought my dream of fighting was done before it ever began. And so in this time, Cale Sanderson brought me out to Iowa State, and I go out there. I'm a medical red shirt. I'm not competing for the team, but he's saying stay active. And I start helping guys train MMA. And I told him that we made an agreement I could fight in the off season. And so I'm traveling around helping all sorts of guys that were like the posters on my wall when I was a kid. I idolized these guys, and now I'm their training partner. Now I'm going to barbecues with them. Sure. And I show up to Oklahoma City. I get off a plane to corner a guy in wrestling, MMA, but I'm his wrestling coach. And he has such a bad staph infection in his thigh that it was in his femur bone. Oh. And they thought they might have to amputate. This guy still has a crater in his quad. And real good friend of mine, and they elected me to go to the press conference, the weigh-ins, and say he's not showing. He's sick. And I get there, tell the promoter, tell the heavyweight he was fighting. That guy just instantly starts talking trash, saying that he ended up in the hospital one night early. I was going to send him there tomorrow night anyways. He's a coward. He's probably not even sick. And the promoter had seen me wrestle because I was the Texas kid that could beat the Okies. And so he's like, hey, I see the smoke coming out of your ears. And if you take this guy down, you'll dominate him. If you stay standing, you'll get knocked out. I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, I'm going to pay you. I was like, oh. He's like, do you want the? I go, yes, I want the fight.
We interrupt this episode with a shameless self-promotion. Are you pushing through performance roadblocks caused by pain or janky movement mechanics? Knock the rust off with our movement health courses, used by thousands of athletes worldwide, from average Joes to MVPs. Our courses give you the tools to assess and fix yourself so you can get back to break-in necks and cash in checks. Not convinced? Get a taste of how our courses can help you by enrolling in a free sample today. Head to powerathletehq.com and search courses from the menu. Now back to the show.
So I just stepped on the scales. We did our stare down or face off, and I took the fight on a day notice. And I ended in about 2 minutes, kind of more of the same story. A month or two later, I'm cornering another guy who's got the flu. He's got 102 degree. I just kind of raise my hand and go, okay, I'm here. Step on the scale, fight that. The third one is probably the best one. I probably should have been smart enough to take my gym bag everywhere I went by now, but I was in Iowa because I was at Iowa State and I'm in Des Moines, and I'm basically wearing jeans and cowboy boots and a button-down shirt. And me and my buddy Brett has no MMA training, no wrestling, no anything. I'm 19 years old. So we're about 3 beers. I'm about 2.5 beers in, and we're in the crowd.
Where all good decisions are made.
Right. Some liquid courage. And we're sitting there, and the promoter comes into the cage after 2 or 3 pretty good fights. And he apologizes to the crowd. He's got a heavyweight with him in the cage. It was the co-main event of that night. They go, we don't know what's going on. We've called the other heavyweight fighter. He weighed in yesterday. He's not at the hotel. He hasn't checked in here. He's not answering his phone. His coaches aren't answering their phone. So we can refund your tickets. We can, we're sorry. You can have a voucher for the next ticket when he fights. And that's not good for fight business. So that guy saw what was going on. People are mumbling and grumbling and cussing. And so he grabbed the microphone and said, if anyone happens to be over 206 pounds, I came here to fight tonight. Let's put on a show. And he's like, if you've had some MMA experience, this wouldn't fly now. This was 2006, 2007, and it was Iowa. So there wasn't a real boxing commission over
Federation,
it.
all that.
Not state athletic commission over it. And so I look at my buddy Brett. He goes, oh no, what are you thinking? I'm like, have you ever been a corner man before? He's like, no. I'm like, you're about to be. So I kind of shrug and chug and stand up, raise my hand. And I guess, I don't know, I'm going into fight stories. I normally don't do this, but I go into the back with Brett. I have no shorts. I have no mouthpiece. I have no gear. And so I literally have to borrow a pair of shorts from a fighter that's already fought. We find a boil and bite mouthpiece. We throw it into a coffee pot in the locker room. This like just terrible coffee. So it kind of formed to my mouth. And then I tried to get by without when the judge or ref comes back and is reading you the rules and everything. I tried to get by without a cup, do the cup check. He's like, come on, kid, like you're going to have to find a jock and a cup. So a 3-round light heavyweight fight just finished, and it was like a barn burner. I have to borrow this guy's sweaty jock. And I think that was my shortest fight I've ever had. And I think it was because I just wanted to get out of that sweaty jock.
Yeah.
So it was the guy I went in there and got in the cage. I think what's funny is everyone in the crowd probably thought, who's this hillbilly that just like stood up and raised his hand? Like half the crowd loved it. Yeah. And half the crowd thought I was going to a massacre, which they probably love that, MMA fans, and not knowing that I was an elite wrestler and things like that. So it was, that guy had cauliflower ears. I knew he was going to shoot, and I just waited to catch him with an uppercut when he came in and sprawled out and then ground and pound, and it was over.
Nice.
But then I started taking MMA serious. It was like, Kale gave me a choice of like, hey, you can come to Penn State, follow me, but you won't be able to do MMA anymore. Or you can follow this career. And so the UFC had kind of caught wind of me. I was training with all these guys, and the Ultimate Fighter was coming up. So I went on that. But the whole time I was fighting this addiction, and I wasn't being honest about it. And on the Ultimate Fighter TV show, I snuck Oxy into the show. I had 2 different prescription bottles that were labeled as something else that was actually Oxy.
This episode of Power Athlete Radio is powered by Train Heroic, the most immersive strength training app experience on the market. We've built an online training business by partnering with Train Heroic to deliver all of our world-class training programs like Jack Street, Hammer, Field Strong, and Grindstone. To learn which Power Athlete training program best suits your goals, head to powerathletehq.com/training. And if you're a coach looking to build a business with the best training tech in the business, head to trainheroic.com/powerathletehq. And now back to the show.
And I just didn't know how to break it. I mean, 4 months before surgery, right? Like in that mini, like I was chemically dependent on it. I was probably emotionally dependent on it. And I was a full blown addict the whole time. So I had built up a winning record, but when I got off the show, I was invited to train with Coach T or Trevor Whitman, Shane Carwin, Brendan Schaub, Rashad Evans, then who else? Dwayne Bang Ludwig, Nate Marquardt, Justin Gaethje. And we're surrounded by some of the greatest at the time. And it was awesome. But my addiction was so bad that I eventually thought I could hide it pretty good. But obviously I couldn't, because I walked into the training room and there are basically 35 guys looking at me, and Trevor brings me into his office, and I just knew it was different that day. And he's like, "Hey kid, you got to go get some help. We just took a vote. It was 34-1. You're off the team. And I was the only one that wanted to keep you around, wanted to give you a second chance. And the team they said we can't stand by you whenever you're not taking care of yourself, taking care of us. So go get some help." And that sent me off on a journey where, I was training for the main event at the Hard Rock in Vegas at that time.
Yeah.
And the only place I could find to train was a high school wrestling team. And it wasn't an elite high school wrestling team either. So it was pretty demoralizing. And I take that fight in Vegas. I win, but I had fought through even having a stomach ulcer, and I was throwing up before. I basically choked down, like vomit during the fight, like covered my mouth and like was choking it back down. And it went full 3 rounds. And after the fight, I just threw up like I've never thrown up before in my life. They did an endoscopy and I had the stomach ulcer. And man, I went on this downward spiral because I went on a binge for about 2 weeks. And then I don't really remember much, but I got a voicemail, and it was my best friend. And he said, "I can't believe you missed my wedding. I can't believe my best man didn't show up." And, I was getting these different calls of like, "Where are you?" All this stuff. But that one was like, oh shit. Like, I can't even help but hurt the people that love me. And like, I've got to do something about this. Well, I say that came after like a suicide attempt, because I just thought, man, I'm hurting people I love. And so it took 10 years to get there, from like that 13-year-old moment to 23. I actually attempt suicide, and it was a real deal one. I mean, it was basically like taking 80 oxys at once. Oh, wow. And drinking like a whole big bottle of Everclear, and just wanted to go out. Somehow I didn't, and very thankful for that now. But from there, I started just, life's not about me right at this moment, like get outside of myself, try to find some purpose through service. And I got invited to, that train of thought started after this moment where this dad reached out. He was a fan of The Ultimate Fighter. His son had a traumatic brain injury. That kid's brother was a fight fan too. So at this time they're wearing all the tap out stuff. And
oh, dude, I remember UFC.
Remember tap out?
Well, so little known fact, my buddy Rick, and do you remember when Tap Out had their like characters?
Yeah, ass.
Yeah, my buddy Jade was the long-haired one.
Okay.
And so my buddy Rick, who does Starling Gear, did a lot of those logos for, what was the guy's, the Bane dude with the shaved head?
Oh my God.
I think he's dead now.
He is. He passed away. He had the face paint.
Yeah.
Chuck. Okay.
Yeah, so Chuck was a prison guard. And so my buddy Jade was a cop, and that whole thing started. And my buddy Rick was like the artist that did all the No Fear stuff. And
oh yeah, I remember No Fear.
Yeah. So that whole thing started. And then Todd White, who's my neighbor up the road. I don't know if you know Todd.
I don't know Todd.
He's an artist. He's one of Jean-Jacques Machado's original black belts.
Oh, yes, I know Todd.
So he did like SpongeBob SquarePants. Mm-hmm. So they brought Todd in.
Wait, Todd did SpongeBob?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, he was like that. Yeah.
That badass black belt?
Yeah. Yeah, no, Todd. And he lives like a mile up the road.
Where's his gym? Is it close by?
So academy? He sold his academy, and so he's got a big property up on 12.
Cool.
But weird stories. Yeah. So I went to a bunch of UFC events and the tap out stuff, and then like saw the people that were wearing the tap out. I mean, that shit, they sold a fucking mill. Like I thought Jesse James and West Coast Chopper sold a lot of t-shirts. Yeah, tap out stuff. They sold a lot.
Yeah, well, Tap Out was our sponsor on The Ultimate Fighter. I was on season 10 with Rampage and Rashad, it was, so when I got kicked off that team and I tried to end my life, and then, there's the Heyday, 2009 or 10, this dad reaches out and asked me to come visit his son. So I do. And I got there and man, I thought I was going to go maybe encourage a kid for like 30 minutes is a good thing to do while I'm kind of trying to get my life back together. And, when I got there, I guess I was just shocked because of how bad off the kid was. He could only moan in agony and groan and had no clue I was there. So I almost felt like, why they're having me get down by his bed and take a picture with him.
Addiction or?
No, he was 12. His name was Bryce.
So,
and a traumatic brain injury. He got in a 4-wheeling accident.
Oh shit.
And I think what happened was, I think they said he rolled and the 4-wheeler ran over his head, but he also hit a tree. And so he had broken bones, all sorts of stuff. And it was gnarly. So I took a picture with him, but when I left there was this, I think it might've been a chaplain of the hospital and the nurse, and they followed me out. And it was a good visit, but I think maybe I was looking for some sort of sympathy that I wasn't going to get. I asked that, what was the point of that? And he's not going to know I was there. And cause they asked, how are you doing? I can see you welling up with some tears. And I was like, man, that was rough. Like, why was I invited here? He goes, hey, stop that. Stop being selfish. This wasn't about you. This was about doing a good thing. It was about showing up. You showed up. Like, you should do this some more. And the nurse had followed me out. She gave me a pamphlet she said, you really did good. Like, you should come back and volunteer more. So I went through this like night school for a couple weeks. She said it would be good for me to be on the oncology unit. And she took me by one of those rooms. And when I walked in, this kid, I don't know, synchronicity, was playing the UFC video game, right? I was like, maybe there is something here. And seeing that little boy that's, bald and fighting a much bigger fight than I've ever fought, like more of a fighter, more of a warrior, I was just like, oh shit. So going through the night school, like those kids changed me. I was a volunteer there at least 3 to 5 days a week, if not 7 days a week, a lot of times, or sometimes for 9-10 months. And it was almost like people have AA, and I do that now, and I'm grateful for that community, like a sober support network, right? But at that moment, like service was getting me sober and helping my life and giving me purpose, and seeing these other fighters fighting a much more real fight than what I ever fought. So that's happening. I start volunteering also at the Denver Rescue Mission and some other places. And then I would just say, I had a moment where my agent's calling me, trying to get me back into fighting and saying, look, it seems like life's going better now. I organize a hospital trip for Grudge, or the Trevor Whitman's team. And we go to the children's hospital, and these guys just rocked it with these kids. And right beforehand, the director of the hospital, who I knew, tried to stop it from happening. We're not letting a bunch of fighters who hit people for a living visit these kids. And I was like, wait, that's what I do. She's like, wait, what? That's what you do? I'm like, yeah, just give us a chance. Give us a shot. We're going to be one of the favorite visits they've had. And afterwards, she was like, yeah, it was you and the biker guys that are like the two best people at the children's hospital. I don't understand it. And so the team surprised me, invited me back on the team, said, looks like you got life going right now. So come on back. And I just said, I don't know yet. Like, I think there's something more. And I had been offered like a fight at the Saitama Super Arena in Tokyo, Japan. It's like an iconic fight for MMA. And it's basically the opponent was served up on a silver platter because I thought I was better at the same style that he was doing. So every fight's dangerous, but this one's not as dangerous because what he's good at, I'm better at least in my opinion. Coaches too. And then he's also thrown me a golden rope of like, I had some money problems. All I'm doing is volunteering for 9 or 10 months. It doesn't pay the bills. And I didn't get an eviction notice, but it was basically a warning. Like, hey, you better pay up. And I'm not used to that. And I'd been able to take care of myself. And so I have this moment where it's like, why do I not feel in my spirit or intuition like this is the right thing to do? Like, it's the perfect fight. My goals list as a kid, number 3 was be a national champion wrestler. Number 2 was fight in the UFC. Number 1 was actually to fight at the Saitama Super Arena in Tokyo, Japan on New Year's Eve. Here's the fight.
Sure.
And So I had a guy say, you should like meditate on this or pray about it, or just like throw it out there and ask, like, do I take this fight or not? And I did that, and it felt like a no. I don't know why, but just felt like not right now, no, or not yet. And so I was frustrated. And I remember just saying a prayer, whether it was God or source or universe or whatever. I said, God, what do I do with my life? Like, what do I do? I knew I had this purpose. I didn't want to leave this behind with like volunteering and making an impact, or at least helping in some sort of way, contributing. Like I was finally contributing. But like it was kind of shotgunned, scattered. And so whenever I said that prayer, man, this is the most nuts moment of my life. Like I had a vision that just dropped, and it was like I was having a movie in my mind, but around me. Have you been to the Sphere in Vegas? It was like that.
Well, no, I mean, I've had like weird out of body kind of moments. Like not, I don't mean out of body where you like, take ketamine and you're floating out, but I mean like moments where you have this incredible sense of like you're hyper aware and you can see the moment happening in real time. And I've always referred to them as 8 Mile moments.
8 Mile moments. Why?
Yeah. Like, no, this happened before the movie 8 Mile came out, but I love the 8 Mile. Like one of my favorite movies is 8 Mile.
I don't think I've seen it.
With Eminem?
Yeah, I don't think I've seen it.
Where he has like his moment where he gets on stage and he's rapping in like the rap battle and just fucking crushes the guy. So I've always...
I need to watch it.
On the podcast and through just the many years that we've been doing this, I've talked about there's certain moments in your life where you're put into a situation and how you react in that moment dictates the rest of your life.
Yeah.
It's like, they always show those things where it's like this moment and then it splinters this way.
Yeah.
And I call those 8 Mile moments, and I've had several. And maybe the reason I've had success in this world is because in those moments I've realized this is my fucking moment.
Yeah.
I'll just give you an example. I was, when I came in the NFL, I came in and started, I got hurt my rookie year, ruptured my patellar tendon. Wow. Guy comes in and says, hey, your NFL career is over. And so I was like, I look over, my dad's got a tear down his face. So I'm in surgery that night. I don't bend my knee for 3 weeks. I don't walk for 3 months. I have to get up and like learn to do all this. I'm on crutches. And I went back with the idea of like, I'm just going to go back and like rehab to be healthy and be normal. I don't want to walk with a limp. So I start training. Everything's going really well. Figure, go to training camp. I'll get cut and I'll, go on and live my life, and football will be finished. Was the starting right tackle. Now all of a sudden I'm like the 3rd string left tackle. I was so far down on the depth chart, I was on the 2nd page. Wow. And I'd been a starter in this whole deal. They'd signed like a high price free agent in the offseason, $10 million a year to play my position. So I'm like, I'm not playing that position. And we go into training camp and I'm like playing pretty well. Everything's going well. All of a sudden that guy named John Runyon gets hurt and he tears some rib muscles. He's out for like 3 weeks. His backup goes in, he's getting killed. And Andy Reid, who was our coach at the time, looks over and he goes, didn't you used to play right tackle for us? And I'm like, I did. He said, go play right tackle. So I went in, was the backup right tackle. Within 2 days, I was the starter. So I'm playing pretty well. And we go in for the first playoff game or first preseason game. And the guy who was the starting left defensive end for the team we were going to play was number 1 pick overall. I'm starting right tackle. All the world is, he's the number 1 pick overall. Every camera's on him. And we went out and I think we played like maybe 3 or 4 series. I murdered this kid.
Yeah.
So then after the game, all the cameras are around and they want a big deal. Like, hey, do you think it was fair that they paid this guy $10 million? And like, you could play this position. And I was like, hey man, that guy's high price free agent. He's a beast. You seen him? Like I would pay him $10 million. So all of a sudden the media is like, they like walk away and the GM walks over and he's like, thank you. Like that was, you diffused a situation that could have been really ugly for us. So then the next day we come in, we're watching film and the GM taps me. He's like, I got like 10 teams trying to trade for you right now. And I was like, oh really? I mean, I get a chance to go be a starter. And he's like, yeah, we're not going to trade you though. I was like, oh, okay. So then we go back out to, Lehigh, Pennsylvania. So we're back in training camp. We're running an inside zone kind of 9-on-7 run drill. And the guy who's playing left guard gets blown up. Right. And like, the defense is like runs through, tackles the guy. And this is like, fucking 100-degree heat, like tempers flaring, the whole thing. So big fight starts. Coach goes, same play on 2, we're going to get this right. Same play, guy gets blown up. And all of a sudden, like I had, I was actually second string because Runyon had come back. So now I'm back to second string. And I had gone and got a drink of water, and I like walked up and I was kind of standing there. And as this is all going on, Andy Reid looks over and like looks at me and he goes, "Go in." And I was playing right tackle. I'd never played left guard. So they pull that guy out. I go back in, and I knew, I was like, this moment is going to be my moment. And as soon as, and I said it to myself, I'm standing there, I look over at everybody, and the quarterback looks at me and he goes, "Same play on 2. And this, now we're running 3 plays, same exact play. And this guy's, in a position, I got to drive the guy off. I get off the ball quick, basically get underneath the dude, lift him, slam him. We run the ball, runs for a touchdown. Whistle blows. End of the period.
Yeah.
So we jog over. Everybody's fucking hooting and hollering. Great deal. We go over, and it's like 11-11 pass. So now that guy goes back in. I'm kind of just standing there watching. 11-11 pass. That guy now he's in the tank, gets hit with a spin move, gives up a sack. The defense is fucking going crazy. Andy Reid looks at me and goes, "Get the fuck in there." So I went in there, and I was a tackle. So playing pass protecting at guard is much easier than at tackle. I just played like a tackle, and I was killing these dudes. So after I get done, I stone the guy. There's no plays. Everything's locked down. He looks at me walking over. He's like, "This is permanent." And now I was the starting left guard. So like that moment,
8 Mile moment.
Oh, dude, it was like, I can still see it like a print in my mind.
Yeah.
I knew exactly like what stand. It's like crystal clear in my brain.
Yeah.
And I knew at that moment, something told me, we came out, I got a drink of water, and most of the guys were standing in the back. I ran back up to the front to watch, just because I wanted to see it. And if I hadn't been there and he looked over,
yeah,
and it just, I'm sure for you, there's been these moments where you look back now and you think,
what if I wouldn't have done this? What if I wouldn't have done that?
Or if I had just said no.
Yeah, exactly.
You're like, hey, I went to go do this. Or like, what if I was disconnected? Or what if I didn't put, and I figure that if, I think a lot of people miss opportunity just for the fact that they don't put themselves in the right position.
Yes.
How many times have somebody said, "Hey, do you want to go do this?" And you go, "Yeah, sure."
Yeah.
Like our mutual friend, Matt Benson. Hey, it's like, "Hey, do you want to go
on
over
a motorcycle trip?"
Yeah, let's go on a motorcycle trip.
And then I say, "Hey, you want to go over to Uganda?" And he's like, "Yeah, I do."
Yeah. Well, I mean, same thing. Like Matt called me and he's like, "Hey, do you know how hard it is to find guys, 1, that can ride a motorcycle, 2, that have 5 days off to go riding a motorcycle?" And there was a million reasons I couldn't go. And then he calls me. He's like, "Dude, I need you." I'm like, if you have to fucking pressure me to go fly to San Francisco and ride a motorcycle for 5 days to California, all expenses paid, I need to readjust my fucking life.
Yeah.
And we went and had the most amazing adventure. And it's still one of the coolest things I've ever gotten to do.
Yeah, me too. Well, this 8 Mile moment for me, to go back to it real quick, because I guess that I had those in those 3 opportunities that I wasn't supposed to fight. Yeah. I take them.
You just happened to be there.
Yeah,
and
just happened to be there, and I'm ready.
Yeah.
Like the preparation met the opportunity. I'm ready to go. Let's do it. So this was a little bit different because all of a sudden I have this vision. I said, "God, what do you want me to do with my life?" Boom. And it's like me being in the Sphere in Vegas, because like the stuff was all around me or behind me. Like it felt like I was there, although I knew I wasn't there, but it felt like I was. And so I'm walking down this footpath deep in the rainforest somewhere, and I'm clearing vines and thickets out of the way. And I keep walking and hiking. And I remember the footpath was like barely wide enough for my foot. And as I keep walking, I hear drumming, and I keep walking, and I have curiosity, and I hear singing. It's a very distinct singing that I know now, but it was like this tonal tribal singing. I keep walking. I come into a clearing. Now I came into a clearing, I see these twig and leaf huts that are in the shape of domes, and there's these big leaves on them, and they're not mud huts. They're like specifically leaves and these twigs. And I meet or acknowledge this man, and we don't talk, but I think the word's emaciated. You can count his ribs. He's coughing. And I guess I'm flooded with this knowledge, or just knowing that he's hungry, thirsty, poor, sick, oppressed, enslaved. And when I was coming out of the vision, it felt like they were forgotten. They identify as forgotten. And I came out of the vision, I felt nuts, because I had started on my ass, I think, like sitting there just kind of, and then I was on my knees and forearms, and I'm crying. Like hyperventilating, crying, like, and I don't understand why, who they are, where they are. And I feel a little crazy, and I cried a little puddle of tears. And I this time in my life, I hadn't cried much, maybe at that moment when I was a kid. And then, I mean, it's a silver dollar size puddle of tears. Well, not puddle, but silver dollar size. And I'd never cried like this for any funeral, maybe all the funerals combined, or heartbreak or anything like that. And I take out a piece of paper and I write down forgotten at the top, and I underline forgotten, and then write down hungry, thirsty, poor, sick, oppressed, enslaved. And then I thought, I'm never going to tell a human being this. Like, I'm crazy. If I had some psilocybin to point back to, or ayahuasca to point at, or something. Yeah. Otherwise, if this isn't a psychedelic reactivation, then this is a psychotic episode, and I can't tell anybody.
Sure.
And so for 3 days I was determined, and I got invited to this like speaking engagement, this guy sharing his story. And I go with some friends that I had met through volunteering, and they were doing some cool stuff. I meet this guy. Well, this guy, Caleb's on, it's not even a really stage, it's a room. And he shares his story, and he's lived with the Maasai in Tanzania and Kenya that hunt lions, or at least protect their livestock from lions. He lived with the Vanuatu tribe that invented bungee jumping, just vines tied around their ankles, and they literally kiss their forehead on the dirt to bless their yams. It's the wildest thing if you ever pull up that picture or pictures and videos of them doing it. And I'm like, oh, this guy's a little wild. He's done survival training and helps Bear Grylls. And I'm like, well, maybe if there's one guy I can tell, it's this guy. So this was 3 days after the vision. But I go and get in the vehicle with my buddies, and they start up the ignition. I'm like, wait, hold on, time out. This 8 mile moment where I am like, I got to go tell this guy something. I'm going to go take my phone number. So I write it down. I go in there, I try to hand him my phone number. He had a line, so I didn't want to bother him and wanted to let him go do his thing. Go back in, the line's done. He's just standing there. I go to hand him my number. He goes, what? You got something to tell me? I'm here. Tell me now. And I'm thinking, I'm never going to see this guy again. And I go, well, I don't know. It's a little bit of a long story. Why don't you call me? You just spoke. Why don't you call me whenever you have some more time, like in the next few days or next few weeks? He goes, no, tell me right now. I can tell you got something to say. So I'm like, I'm not sure how to say this, but I tell him the vision, and he kind of cracks a smile at the end of it. And I'm like, what? He goes, I know who they are. And I said, what? He goes, those are the Mabuti pygmy people, or the pygmy people in 8 or 9 African nations. They're in the Congo basin rainforest. And I'm like, okay. He goes, I'm going in 3.5 weeks. You're coming with me. And I'm like, wait, who are they? Where are they? What are we doing? He goes, well, 3 days ago, the rebels took over the airport. Yet the day after that, my team canceled. I was taking 3 other people, their husbands, their fathers. Yesterday, my wife told me, you're not going alone. You need some sort of sign. He goes, so now you're going to jump in my car. We're going to my house, and you're going to go tell my wife this vision. So we get there, and he says, the U.S. State Department says no one for any reason go at all. And it's not safe and other things. And we don't have a flight in. We can fly into Uganda, but we can't get into Congo. And I'm like, okay, well, why don't we postpone this? Why don't we delay it? And we meet Jess, his wife, who's pregnant, who's got a toddler running around. And I'm like, I'm not telling this woman like this. And he pulls it out of me. And instead of her having some sort of like negative reaction or being scared, her and him start coaching me. She goes, Caleb, you got to take this guy. And I'm like, let's do it next year. Let's let things die down. And they said, if you don't go, you'll never know. You always wonder what coulda, shoulda, woulda happened. Yeah. Like, you got to go.
Sure.
And so I do. And we bring one of Caleb's buddies, Colin, with us. We go and we get to Uganda. We don't even have a flight into Congo, but we meet one pilot that says basically, hell no, but call this guy. So we meet them. They take us over. We're flying around a runway when they don't know the last time someone landed was. And so we're circling it. People running out of mud huts with machetes, which at first was a little sketchy, but they were late to clearing the grass so we could actually land. And so we land. There's monkeys on the runway. I'm like, I had never planned to go to Africa at all. Maybe for a safari, but it wasn't like I never had an official bucket list, but it just wasn't in my plans. And I'm 23. And I was focused on fighting.
The only thing I wanted to see was Victoria Falls. I wanted to swim with the great whites in South Africa.
Nice.
But, we taught seminars, and when I was working with CrossFit, and there was an opportunity to go to Africa, and I ended up having to go to another seminar And my guys went to Africa and I didn't get to go, and I've never had a chance to go back, but I don't really have a burning desire to go to Africa.
Yeah. It's a beautiful place.
Yeah. I mean, it's probably like the most, resource dense place on the planet.
Without a doubt.
And I've never seen a level of poverty.
Yeah.
Like whenever you see like the stuff in Africa, you're like, it's Africa. Yeah. Like, you see, I've been to Brazil and, Mexico. I mean, all over the world I've been, and the poverty you see in Africa is like, I mean, it's fucking wild.
Sorry for getting off the mic for a sec, but I'll pull up a picture because so we land, we go for about 6-8 hours, and then we sleep in this mud hut. And we wake up, and then this was my first time ever on a motorcycle. The first time driving a motorcycle was with Matt Vincent on the trip. So I got my motorcycle license 6 days before that. But my first time on a motorcycle was riding behind.
First of all, the fact that you got a motorcycle, hadn't rid, jumped on those bikes, and were able to go through that journey is pretty amazing. But also goes to show you how good those bikes were.
Oh, yeah. Those bikes were epic.
Dude, my first bike in college was a 76 Honda 750 Super Sport Cafe Racer. I got like rigid choppers and all these fucking shovel heads and crazy shit I used to ride. So I'm used to riding piece of shit motorcycles, with like oil all over you and like burning your leg on the exhaust pipe and fucking rigids where you're pissing blood when you get off. And to like get on those Barker Loungers with fucking handlebars and just cruise them. I told Matt, I'm like, because he was like, shit, can people do this? I'm like, dude, if you're at all present in your life, like, we're wearing full face helmets, there's music pumping in. Yep. I'm like, it's like a video game, dude. Like everybody will be fine. Yeah. And he's like, you think? And I'm like, yeah. And you were,
I guess I was proof.
Yeah. You were proof that everybody
proof
survived.
Positive. Yeah. Everyone survived. And that was a blast. But this was riding through the African rainforest, not on a road, but on basically footpaths on the motorcycle. So like dirt biking basically. Yeah. Except on shitty like
French
Indian or Chinese. Well, they were called a Sin-K, which is a Chinese model motorcycle that costs like $600. And we're riding through the rainforest that way. We get on a dugout canoe that's basically just this massive tree trunk. And there's crocodiles and hippos in this river. And we're going across it in a canoe. And I'm like, what are we doing?
Not really a canoe, more like a big trunk.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
They just burned out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And we get across and we hike, and we're starting to clear vines and thickets out of the way. And we hear drumming and we hear singing, and we come into a clearing, and the first guy we meet is coughing. You can count the ribs on his side. And it was so wild because it wasn't like the guy from the Vision. It was the guy from the Vision. Wow. That I was so weak in the knees. I was spinning. It was real. So it was so surreal that it's happened that I had to take a knee because otherwise I was going to fall over. And Caleb's grabbing my trap going, this is your vision. This is your vision. I had the vision written down in my backpack on my back. And I was like, it was just a whirlwind of emotions or thoughts. Like, does stuff like this actually happen? Can it happen? It was like deja vu times 1,000.
Yeah.
And the whole time we were there, well, here was the huts. I'll show it to you real quick because later I would go back, and this was my third trip where I lived there for a year, but that was my hut for a year, my home. And it was the huts from the Vision. And wow. I ended up getting to stay there with a hunter-gatherer tribe. And Caleb and I stayed there for a couple of weeks.
You guys can see that. We'll like zoom in a little bit. You can kind of see.
Yeah, that palm leaf on the left, that is like my door.
Yeah, that looks like a...
If you send it to me, I'll make it full screen.
We'll pull that in. That's pretty awesome.
And how we got there was exactly the way from the Vision. And I'm just like, what is going on? Why? And Caleb, at the end of our trip, a couple weeks, maybe more, maybe 18 days, we're there. And maybe the second to last day, he said, so what are you going to do? And I said, what are you talking about? What am I going to do? While we were there, we had slave masters come up to us and say, what are you here doing with my property? I own these people.
How does that work?
Yeah, that's been a weird thing to walk through over the last 13 years.
So people just walk over and they're like, you all belong to me now?
It can't happen that way. Most of the times there, it's kind of like kind of a family inherited a family. And so maybe 2 or 3 generations back, it was more beneficial for the slave masters. Then maybe last generation it started getting kind of harder because it's harder for them to provide for themselves. So don't think of it in terms of like colonialist where one guy owns 100 people or something like that. It's like normally a family owns a family. Mm-hmm. Or I've seen it where a guy owns a bunch of, like a whole community, like a whole tribe of 85 to 135 people. So I have seen it that way. But
how does that agreement go? I always kind of figured like slavery requires force.
Yeah. You would think that. And I've seen it that way where people are in ropes or being beaten and or held at gunpoint around the mines, the gold, the coltan, the lithium, the cobalt. Yep.
Yeah, I just listened to that podcast with Joe Rogan where the guy was like, hey, every cell phone ever we have has lithium in it or has cobalt. Yep. And here's what the cobalt mine looks like. Mm-hmm. And like, on the website, it's like, mined exclusively with equipment.
Right.
And then they're showing pictures and there's like 6-year-old kids dragging shit out.
I've seen probably a 10-year-old boy pulled out of a mine that had collapsed on him and he was dead. And I remember I tried to take a picture one time at one of these mines just to show what it looks like. And then all of a sudden the rebel groups were on me with like guns and it was held at gunpoint. And I was just like, delete, like, I'm sorry. And giving them a bag of passion fruit. That's like, I don't know, like a bunch of passion fruit, like 100 passion fruit and some water is like saying, hey, I'm sorry. I'm here just to drill wells, do water, stuff like that. And so it's gnarly. There's all sorts of different circumstances. It's not blueprint or cookie cutter. It's all different, but I would say the pygmy people traditionally, so they're thought of as less than human. Because their average height is 4'7" for the men, 4'6" or 4'7" for the men. So they're normally less than 100 pounds. Wow. And so
why is it? Is it just genetics or is it food?
I think it's a few different contributing factors, but anthropologists have said evolution, they need to, me walking through the forest with them trying to hunt. I sound like an elephant. They've called me the vanilla gorilla, the albino rhino, different things.
Yeah, they're
I'm
super
not quiet.
Agile.
Yeah, they're barefoot and they're running and they're dead silent for the most part.
Yeah.
And I'm like trying not to make noise. I'm snapping sticks under my feet and everything else. And so they needed to be smaller and nimble and agile like that and climb trees and everything. But also they've been living under the canopy of the rainforest. So some anthropologists say it could be a vitamin D deficiency. Others malnutrition.
Yeah, nutrients.
But while I was there, so it's kind of been explained to me a few different ways, like before chainsaws and the deforestation that's happened there, it was the pygmy people almost had the advantage where they're trading bushmeat, protein, for corn, beans, rice, whatever. And so they had this symbiotic relationship where they would trade for bananas or whatever it is that the agricultural people are doing or the farmers. And then whenever chainsaws came in and deforestation and other things, the land was either bought up or taken up or they'll just wave a piece of paper that the pygmy people can't read and say, this is our land. But whenever they're cutting down these trees that sound like it is, sounds like it's thunder whenever these trees fall, but you can see through the canopy. There's no clouds in the sky. It's these huge trees you could drive an 18-wheeler through or at least a truck through. And when those things fall, it makes the animals scared and skittish and they flee deeper and deeper into the rainforest. So now it's hard for the pygmy people the Mbuti, the Efe, the Batwa, to provide for them, for the other people. So then some conflicts started happening. Like, where's our meat? Where's this stuff? We have to have it for ourselves before we can give it to you.
And this is in the Congo Basin, right? Mm-hmm. Which has some really interesting historical preference with like King Leopold from Belgium.
Yep.
I mean, thinks that he enslaved, killed
everybody,
20 to 30 billion.
Yep.
I mean,
I think there was 20, we could fact check. I think there was 20 million at that time in Congo, DRC, which was before it was Zaire. And then it's back to Democratic Republic of Congo. He killed anywhere from 10 to 12 million of the 20 million that were there. Oh,
he's conveniently left off of the, when they talk about like the greatest mass murderers on the planet, you have Stalin that killed probably the most. And then, like everybody loves to put up Adolf Hitler who, killed 6 million, probably more when you look at like gypsies and other people that they just kind of lumped in on that. But Stalin killed probably triple. They think he killed it. What was 18, 20 million. But Leopold, for some reason,
they call it the African Holocaust, the silent Holocaust. Of the surviving 8 million people, 8 to 10, they think more than half were missing one or more limbs or hands, right? Because they were instilling fear in them. Like if you don't produce whatever quota it is, like you're going to lose your hand. The whole thing in Blood Diamond, like, do you want long sleeve or short sleeve with the machetes? That came from the Belgians.
Yeah.
There's this gruesome, brutal picture of this father reaching out for his daughter, who was probably like 10 or 12. He's reaching out for her and he's missing his hands trying to basically grab his daughter and hug her because she just lost her hands. Her hands are like off right in front, like it just happened. It's one of the most gruesome pictures ever. And so Congo's there was just the worst history. It's terrible there. And
there's a book called Guns, Germs, and Steel.
I haven't heard of it or seen it.
Yeah. So they go through kind of like how this whole evolution process happened, why certain people were able to dominate, and why that. And it basically comes down to guns, germs, and steel.
Wow.
That
that makes sense.
I mean, if you had guns, like, if nobody has guns and now you have a gun.
Yep. You're in control.
Then you're in control. And how the Africans went in and just like the level of, I mean, the land was rich.
Yep.
And people
were
go take it from them. And the people weren't organized enough to fight them off.
Yeah, it started first with I think the ivory boom. And then it went to the rubber boom. So the pygmy people will make, like the kids will make me these, what do you call it? Slingshots, right?
So Guns, Germs, and Steel. What was the book? So I read this, 1997.
Wow.
But it was The Fate of Human Societies, A Short History of Everybody for the Last 13,000 Years.
Wow.
But it basically goes through and this guy goes through and shows like how like all this evolution has come about, and it's based upon these factors. But it's I'm always amazed. And do you know who Bob Sapp is?
Yeah, I know Bob.
Yeah, Bob's a good.
We almost fought.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
So Bob's one of my oldest friends.
Okay.
And he went to Africa and dug wells.
Yeah.
And I went and did all this, and he sent me pictures of these kids, and he's like, it's amazing how many people have come to Africa to help as just a way to bilk these people. And he's like, think about like, even back in the 80s, you remember like, all the musicians getting.
Oh yeah. That terrible song from the UK. That's like where food never grows.
Yeah. And it was bad. It was like, do they even know it's Christmas time in Africa?
Yeah.
Like the worst shit ever. But like they, and there was all that,
awful.
Like, I mean, they did all this Africa aid. I mean, they raised all this money and they never made, Akon goes in there and like did more as one person than all of these humanitarian organizations. Yeah. And I always wonder why.
The dirty secret of the kind of NGO world with water wells, at least, is that there's over 230,000 broken wells in Africa right now.
So they don't have parts.
Which is billions of wasted charitable dollars, because it's going to need maintenance. It's going to need upkeep. It's going to need to be locally affordable. It has to be a local solution to a local problem.
Sure.
Can't just be people who come from the West and doing it for them and basically putting them on the sidelines saying you can't do this for yourself, so we're here to do it for you. It's like, no, our fight for the forgotten, as the story continues, our methodology is basically like, we believe opportunity is greater than charity. So charity, quote unquote, can be great, but it probably should be reserved for natural disaster, war, famine, and people who cannot help themselves. But people facing poverty, even extreme oppression, like if you actually sit down with them, my second trip, the goal was live with, listen to, learn from, then we can love them in a way that like is sustainable, practical, that they want. But whenever you listen to them, they're asking, you'll learn, like, we want a hand up, not a hand out. We want a real opportunity. Show us how to do it. Show us how to do it. Show us how to do it.
The age will teach man to fish. You feed him for a lifetime. Feed a man for a fish he eats for a day.
Yeah. And then how do you go beyond that? Like not just giving them a fish, but teach them how to fish. And then how do you teach them what we're trying to do now is sustainable livelihoods, where not just providing for themselves, but providing for the whole community. So I guess it would be going from learning to fish to learning to create a fishing market.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's our next initiative. But in that moment with Caleb, where he's like, what are you going to do? I'm like, what do you mean? What am I going to do? We're seeing people that are facing slavery. They're asking for land. They're asking for water. They're asking for food. I'm a fighter, not a nonprofit guy. I don't have the ability to do this. Like, what are you talking about? He goes, you had a vision. And I go, okay, Caleb, the visual I have is trying to empty the ocean with an eyedropper. Yeah. Is this thing even going to count? Is it going to matter? Like, are they going to notice? Am I going to notice? Like, I could spend my whole life doing this. Is it going to help? Yeah. And he kind of like that chaplain or whoever that said, hey, stop being selfish. And kind of snapped me out of her, gave me some truth. Caleb goes, hey, you have the wrong perspective. Like every single one of those drops represents a human heart, a person's name, a life. So yeah, it matters. Every single drop, every single one. I was like, oh, okay, that's good. He was like, what more could you possibly need? And I go, I don't know. I just need some sort of sign. He got mad because he's like, a sign, or at least frustrated.
Yeah, we're already here. We got a sign.
We're here. You had it. I saw it. Like, you got your sign. I'm like, Caleb, but just one more thing, like some sort of like confirmation, like do this, I will dedicate my life to it.
Did you ever see, you might be too young, but there was a movie called Real Genius with Val Kilmer from You fucking love it.
I'm going to write it down.
Yeah, it's called Real Genius. It was like when Val Kilmer was like 18, he was like a computer science guy. And, but basically there's like, the guy who's their professor is basically stealing their technology on lasers and like creates this like big weapon. And so then they fuck with him. But this guy who's like kind of their like nemesis in it, he like goes in the professor's house and they basically had like so stupid 80s movies. They made this like, huge thing of popcorn, and then the laser was supposed to come to you, heat the popcorn, and the house explodes the popcorn. But the guy goes there, this guy Kent, he's like, let me have it. And then this like laser comes through the stained glass window and starts like blowing up the popcorn. But that was like my brother and I's joke always would be like, let me have it. And I'd be like, easy, Kent. But like people are looking for some some vision. And that feels like, what was your second one? So actually I have another picture real quick, because what was wild about it was I said, Caleb, I just need something. I need something practical I can do. Well, it feels insurmountable.
Yeah, it was. And it feels that way all the time.
Whenever people talk about like Africa and you see the poverty in this, I mean, I was just watching, prepping for this, I was listening to or watching a bunch of YouTube stuff down in South Africa, how they've come in and they were like, we're going to have to execute all the white people. Like the guy who's in charge now, and he's like, well, there's going to have to be blood. We're going to have to drive these people out. And they have a name for whoever the white people, the landowners and stuff.
Oh, yeah. I forget. But yeah.
Yeah, they have some derogatory name for them, but they were like, there has to be blood in revolution. If people don't die, nothing's going to get done.
Yeah.
And, this
can be
land
sketchy, man.
Well, and they're like, well, this land was stolen. And I'm like, yeah, but it wasn't stolen from you. It was stolen hundreds of years ago. And this, right. I mean, it's super messy.
Oh yeah. Messy.
Because the problem is Africa has been colonized 50 times over.
Yep. And they would have never chose their own borders like that.
Yeah. Well, and I heard an interesting argument the other day for colonialism. Yeah. It was, what was his name? Prince, who started Triple Canopy and Blackwater, talking about like, every time these guys get into power, there are already these like, vicious warlords that are only looking to bilk and steal and do this, and there's no benevolence. He's like, maybe there's a chance for colonialism to go in there and actually try to take control of this stuff. So, I mean, it's pretty wild that like, here we are all these years later. Like people are like, this was the same justification 300 years ago. Yeah. I mean, but the Chinese are going in there.
Oh yeah. They're doing it. It's wild. I've seen the aftermath of a Chinese, I think they were doing like gold dredging in the river.
Yeah.
And they got killed by their neighbors because they basically dammed up this river that was for a fishing village, and they were polluting it like crazy. Yeah. And the people couldn't fish anymore. And so they finally like revolted and killed this community in at least I think like 10 people got killed or something.
Well, the Chinese are like the Borg. from Star Wars or from Star Trek.
Okay.
Do you remember the Borg? Is that like, fuck, dude?
I'm sorry.
I know.
Matt's telling me I got to watch movies. I got to watch shows.
Yeah, but like
I watched Fletch last night. That was
a great
the first
fucking
time.
movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. So long story short, but I had a guy that I played college football with named Todd Stewart, and Stewie was a pretty funny dude. I'll just give you like 2 funny stories about him. So I was a young guy, he was an old guy. So we had to share rooms. So all of a sudden I'm kind of like sitting on the bed, and he like shows up. He's got like 5 pairs of sunglasses, and he's trying to decide what sunglasses he's wearing. I think he smoked a lot of pot. But we get done, and like we'd always have bed check at 10 o'clock. And so it's like 9:58. And he's like, hey, get up. So I got it. Like we were like 2 separate beds. He's like, get up. And he gets over. He's like, I want you to make your bed. And I was like, why? He's like, just fucking do it. So he like makes the bed, and he's like, take your shirt off. And he like moves over, and he's like, get into bed with me. I'm like, why? He's like, just trust me. I'm like, all right. So I'm like a young guy doing that. So we get into bed together. The other bed's perfectly made. We got our shirts off. All of a sudden, knock, the door opens, and the coach comes in, and he's like, hey, I'm in here for bed check. Doesn't say anything, like slowly leaves and shuts the door, and he's like, you can go back to your bed. It was fucking hysterical. And for one of his, I think for his master's, or not his master's, but I think for a thesis for one of the, it could have been his thesis or one of his final papers to graduate. He had this theory that if you weren't funny, that he had like a test that you could take. And based upon the test, and I'm butchering this, it's been years, but he had a theory that if you weren't funny, that there was a certain amount of times that you had to watch Fletch, and eventually you would become, he believed that like, dude, you're really unfunny. You need to watch Fletch 10 times and then just do whatever Fletch says. So I watched Fletch numerous times, and it's pretty true. Yeah. Chevy Chase's humor in that.
I probably need 9 more times to watch it.
Yeah, no, he's like, can I borrow your towel? My car just hit a water buffalo. Like all the one-liners he has, like, I'm going to need a steak sandwich and a steak sandwich. I mean, there's so many one-liners out of that if you were to just watch it enough, you could kind of figure out humor a little bit.
Right.
At least Chevy Chase's humor.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, probably in this other 8 Mile moment, I tell Caleb, I got to have some sort of sign and something I can practically do. And because they need land, water, food, stuff like that. I haven't built a home for myself. I haven't bought land in the United States. Like, how am I I've never drilled a well. Like, what can I actually do? In the second to last, or the day we were leaving, we were saying bye to the community. And the chief came up to us and he said, hey, we don't have, actually he said this part, everyone calls us the forest people, but we call ourselves the forgotten. And when he said forgotten, I was like, oh, like a little bit of a sign, because actually a lot to me, it hit me like a ton of bricks. On the top of the vision, I wrote down forgotten and underlined it. Like forgotten. Now he's saying everyone calls us forest people, but we're the forgotten. I'm there with Caleb and Colin there to my right and my left. And he motions to me, we don't have a voice. Can you help us have one? And in that moment, I just knew like, oh, that's something practical I can do. Yeah. I have some sort of platform with fighting. If I go back to it, I can fight, win, grab the mic, tell them their story, tell the community, or I go on Rogan's podcast or something like that. I can do. Being an American, I have free speech. They're enslaved. They don't.
You have been on Joe Rogan talking about this, haven't you?
Yeah.
And now you're slumming it with me.
Yeah, I love it. No, I'm so grateful Matt introduced us, man. He said you're salt of the earth and that we're brothers on nice. The motorcycle, and that I'm in the same town, so I need to know you. And he was right. Like, this is fun. Yeah. And so, Rogan's helped document it almost every year for, there's been a couple years in between, but I've been on there 9 times. And he's been really good to us because now we're shifting our fundraising model. Hopefully we can find an army or like thousands of people that can donate $5 a month, $20 a month. But we have survived this 13 years, basically going on the show or having a fight and then inviting people to donate one-time donations, which has been awesome if people can do that. But now Matt Vincent's helping like our marketing and with video and updating and thanking donors and celebrating really like the success, because we need to show people what we've done. Yeah. And, we've provided clean water to over 50,000 people. We've built homes. We've started 4 sustainable farms. We've replanted tens of thousands of trees. We've seen more than 1,800 people transition out of a life of slavery and onto more than 3,000 acres of land that they legally own in their tribe's name, to where they can do what they want on that land. They can farm for themselves. They can hunt and gather. If they're in Congo, the land we have in Uganda, they're not allowed to hunt anymore, but they can farm for themselves. And right now we're getting ready to build a hospital, a school, a community development center, a vocational school, and more, right? Like it's going to have a water reservoir that goes down in the mountains through the rainforest to more than 5,000 people.
Wow.
It's going to, they're becoming beekeepers. I just got pictures yesterday of like this was the chief, by the way. Oh. So he comes up to me, and that's actually, I'm holding his grandfather's spear, which is kind of like a family heirloom, right? There's
Sure.
actually like notches. I think I have it on the back side of that spear, but it basically documents what they've killed and things like that. The stool, or you see the sticks that are sticking up, they just plop down on it. I got to sit on it real carefully. I'm not as seasoned in it, but I've broken those things. I think there might be a fire in that picture, or another tripod that it might be cut off, but it's got banana leaves in these cooking a diker. His grandson, on that fire on the left, his grandson, I got to see him get his first 2 kills with that spear. Mm-hmm. So it's his grandfather's spear. And he killed a diker first, a small antelope that's maybe shorter than your knee. And then he killed a large spotted Janae with it. And just food is, they'll eat anything, which has been really cool to experience. Like I've eaten iguana, I've eaten python, I've eaten cobra and black mamba and monkey twice. And, but normally it's like wild hog in the forest or some sort of antelope. And man, they gave me this purpose. So when I said that earlier, like go from fighting against people to fighting for people, like in that moment, that was that 8 Mile moment where it's like, okay, you asked for it, confirmation. What are you going to do now? And it's like, Caleb, if I get something, I'll dedicate my life to this. Because this is a lot. It's a lot to like see and handle. But at the same time, like I've been asking, I asked the universe, ask God, like, what do I do with my life? Now here's the moment. Like, okay, I'll do it now. So I came back for a year trying to like learn more. And as I dug deeper and deeper into this, like it just blew my mind how much oppression they have faced. People there were literally saying, what are you here doing with my animals at times? Like thinking of the pygmy people as less than human.
Who would these people be?
We call them the Makpala. That's what the pygmy call them. And
are they bigger people?
Yeah, for sure.
So are they more like are they a different tribe? So
yes.
Is there like
so there's over 200 tribes in Congo. There's over 60 tribes in Uganda,
so
which
there's
all
like
have their
some
own language.
weird hierarchy of like racism and kind of, I mean,
yeah.
it's not
and
racism,
there's
it's kind of oppression.
There's one tribe that I could point to mostly, but we try not to villainize them, because there's also that tribe in other nations where the pygmy people aren't, and they would be able to say like, well, we don't even have the pygmies. What are you talking about? So basically anyone that surrounds the pygmy people oppress them, because they think of them as less than people or less than human.
Because of their size.
Yeah, because of their size. So they say, look at their huts. They live like animals. That's like a nest that they live in. They don't know their age. They don't know how to read and write. But they're brilliant, beautiful people, because I got stung by a death trotter scorpion, and
that sounds terrible.
It is terrible. Luckily, I only got hit maybe once, maybe twice. And these things, they'll kill you whenever they get in your shirt, and they do like a machine gun sting, and that kills you. So, but they, in moonlight, because I got up out of that hut and went to take a leak in the middle of the night, and I kicked up a leaf that I probably shouldn't have, and got stung. They ran through the forest and found the different herbs and roots and things and put it in a mortar, pounded it up. I have a fever. My teeth are chattering, and they put that thing on my wound, and like the fever broke. And I'm like, wait, what? Maybe I didn't get enough venom or whatever, but also like they knew exactly what I needed.
Yeah.
And they're super smart. And
well, they've been living as one with nature for a long time.
Yeah.
I'm always fascinated. Like I don't mean fascinated like in a good way, but like I've always been kind of like I'm always amazed by like the hierarchy of things. Like we're all in Africa, we're all together, and then like people are constantly looking to put themselves in hierarchy. Like I'm better than you, so I have to put myself and I have to enact, like you were talking about getting picked on.
Yeah.
As a kid, I mean, I think we all got bullied. I had 2 older brothers, and people always bully somebody that they think is younger or this, and then all of a sudden one day you're bigger than them, and you're like, yeah, come bully me now, motherfucker. And I always liked like the bully type of deal.
Yeah.
Like you see somebody bullying people, and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna go bully this person. And it's interesting to me that that they've gone through so much oppression.
Yeah.
Like we were talking about Leopold and this. And the only thing I can ever think of is that like this is all they've ever known.
Yeah.
I had a professor in college, a guy named Pedro Noguera, and he was incredible class at Berkeley because it was all about dispelling myths. He made an interesting point where he's like, during the slave trade, no white man stepped foot in Africa.
Wow.
So how did they enslave these people?
Yeah.
And they were like, all the kings and all the tribes rounded up people, put them in cages, and sent them out on boats. And then they loaded them on boats. So they had a deal that no white man would set foot in Africa.
Well, interesting.
So I mean, there were people, and they were enslaving other tribes.
Yeah.
This had happened, and they were like, "Oh, we have new people showing up on boats to ship them out there."
Yeah.
And so a lot of the myths that these people were holding on to, like this idea that these like evil white people showed up and were collecting people. He's like, "No white man stepped foot in Africa," and that was a big point of contention. Like, as long as you don't set foot here, we'll send you these people. And so it was good in terms of like kind of realizing myths and realizing that slaves got sent this way. Slaves also went that way to the Middle East.
Right.
It just so happened that on the first day they castrated all the men, and at age 60 they slit all their throats. And like, wow. So like the level of brutality and, that the fact that they were still taking white slaves long after they had emancipated and freed the black slave here in America. I mean, so like there was there's a narrative.
It's complex. Yeah.
It's very complex. And what happened in Africa has been, it's all they've ever known. So like different slave masters showed up, but there were, other tribes that were enslaving weaker tribes.
Yeah. And it's still happening.
And it's still happening.
More people, or most people don't know that there's more slaves on earth today than ever in human history. Of course, there's more people, but if you Google it, I think it's 40 to 50 million is the estimated number. An interesting fact you brought up is, or story that I thought of is there's a story of Otabinga, who is a man from basically the community I lived in, but from 1902 to 1906, he was brought to America, and he was in the St. Louis World Fair from 1902 to 1904, I think. 1904 to 1906, he was basically paraded around like a freak show. Yeah. But then 1904 to 1906, he was in the Bronx Zoo, and they put him in the monkey house and they fed him bananas. And so he was living with monkeys, and it was kind of like proof of evolution, or like, look at this half man, half monkey. He shattered the attendance records because whenever they put him in there on display, like everyone wanted to see him. We're throwing things at him. And he finally found out he wasn't going to be sent back to his family. He was bought for a spool of brass wire and a bag of salt. And his family was massacred. And then whenever he found out he wasn't going back, he grabbed a gun and shot himself. Stole a gun and shot himself. The other things that you think about, Willy Wonka, or the Chocolate Factory, right?
Oompa Loompas?
Oompa Loompas were the pygmy people first. And so Oompa Loompas were the pygmies, and they were slaves, and they were enslaved to the Willy Wonka. James Jameson went to Congo, and I think it's kind of, the cartoons that were back in the day where they would throw someone with darker skin or African into this boiling vat. Kind of came from him, because, or at least it can be traced back there. He went there and basically paid other tribes to kill, cook, and eat the pygmy people. And he sat there and did paintings of it. And so he died of malaria while he was there. And so some evil stuff has happened against them.
Yeah.
Evil stuff all through history.
Human history is ugly.
Yeah.
And, and you don't even know how to wrap your head around that stuff. I mean, look at what's happening here in America with the border crisis.
Yeah.
I mean, they're coming across, and my whole deal has always been, if you're don't have a process to bring the people here. Like, you have to have a process. People
It's still legally.
Yeah, just, but the problem is anything the government touches is fucking dog shit.
Yeah.
So, the only way you're going to do it is privatize it. And you actually have to have a process. You can't have people waiting in line for 30 years to come across.
Right.
Like, you have to be able to bring people across.
Yeah.
And the fact that you've created this problem, which now is a humanitarian issue, because, you have children coming, and now all of a sudden the children are disappearing. And like, there's this weird, like, I have kids, and the thought that people's kids are getting stolen by the cartel and other fucking weirdos for whatever nefarious things, like, that's where I'm always like,
it's horrific.
Yeah, it's horrific, and you almost need like a Punisher initiative.
Yeah,
where like bad dudes with skulls on their chest show up and fucking hit people with battle axes and split their skulls for hurting children.
Yeah, like, you'd be a bad dude with an axe.
Well, I believe me, I'm secretly hoping they knock on my door and they're like, hey John, we need you. Let's go. I got a good axe.
Yeah,
but like, this is universal. I mean, I was also looking at like what the Chinese are doing in terms of persecuting Christians and other religions and this. I mean, the Mongolians. I mean, all over the world, you have these pockets of this is happening, and it's like, you don't necessarily know it because people are so stuck within the death scroll of Instagram, and all of a sudden, next thing you know, like I was joking that I followed the Kansas City Chiefs. Right, I played for the Chiefs. I played pro football, so I follow the Chiefs, follow the Eagles. For some reason, the algorithm of following the Chiefs and the Eagles means I get nothing but the Kelsey brothers and Travis Swift, or Taylor Swift.
Travis Swift. Yeah, I like that too.
Right, but like, it's he's got to change his name.
That could be their son. Yeah.
He's going to change his name from Kelsey to Swift, so now it'll be Travis Swift. But I can't get it off my like social media. Like, it's all that pops up on my Facebook. It's all that hits me on Instagram, and it's not necessarily what I'm into. Yeah. And then, I like cars, right? I'm into welding. I like to shoot guns. I like to hunt. Like, there's other things that I'm into. But like, that's what's dominating, and that's what the algorithm is pushing me. And like, to the point where like, I see it and I like instantly scroll past it, or I won't click on things because I don't want it. But it feels like, with all that's going on in the world,
you don't hear what's going on in Congo. It is so mineral rich that whenever you fly over in these little planes, the instruments swirl.
What I'm saying is it by design.
Yeah.
Like are people purposely, I mean, like that guy went on Rogan, and that thing about the cobalt, like his book, I mean, that blew my fucking mind.
Yeah.
Because everybody has I got a phone here, I got a computer. I mean, we're pushing this out, and it's how we communicate. But knowing full well that there's pieces in that phone that were drug out of the ground by a 10-year-old kid, and like, like the level of like brutality, poverty, and just fucking brutality that it takes to mine this stuff. And we just, and then there's people that are, like this weird, like woke oppression, but yet, like, these are it feels so disingenuous. Like, the hypocrisy feels.
Yeah, I agree. So the thing about so I've had the kids come, and I've had a kid come and try to put in my hand a rhinoceros horn, right? Okapi. Have you ever seen an animal in okapi? Okapi. They're pronounced both ways there, but it's got the ass of a zebra, it's got the body of an antelope or like a big elk, and the head of a giraffe. It's like three animals mushed into one, and it's only there where I lived in Congo. And there's like a few hundred of them, maybe a few thousand of them at most. They're an endangered species. So I've had these people that are facing such poverty, like their father has to do that. The Chinese
view them as like a delicacy.
Yep. And their horn will, cure everything.
Yeah. The rhino and the rhino horns will cure impotence. Yeah. And so then they make it in this deal. And I'm like, how impotent are these Chinese people that they have to like, it's fucking wild to me. Yeah. And like they, and the sad part is like, they're not coming and doing it. They're paying these extremely poor people, and they know that if they can get a rhino and a horn, it's worth, enough money to feed their family for years. Yeah.
Or the coltan and cobalt. I've had kids put that in my hands, and I'm holding it, looking at it like, what is this thing? And me not being excited about it, almost like, I don't know how you say it, took the wind out of their sails or crushed them, because they're expecting it to like change my life, or me to change their life by paying for it. And it's what's going in our phones and everything. It's like the cobalt or the coltan that they're handing me. Yeah. And I didn't even know what it was. Right. And, so it's just this like rude awakening part, like, oh shoot, like this kid and his family like are literally enslaved for this item. They're trying to sell it to me. like probably taking a big risk here. Dad won't do it, sending his kid to. So, there isn't as bad repercussions or doesn't get killed for it or what.
You're like, I'm not Samsung. I don't know how to put this into phones, but for them, they don't see like where, like, they know that it's valuable for those individuals.
Right.
Like it's like you don't have to go too far in the world to find all these different things. The problem is this doesn't pop up on my Instagram feed.
Yeah.
I mean, I get, Travis Swift all day, and the Kelsey brothers, which like it's great. Like I'm stoked that she's a billionaire. I'm amazed that like she seems like a kick-ass business person. Those guys are good football players. I'm stoked they won the Super Bowl. I wish I'd won a Super Bowl. I'm excited to see it. 2 people in their mid-30s that happen to find love. Good on them. Congratulations. I'm so glad that this gal was able to find a good dude and he loves her in this. Amazing. Go off and live your fairytale life. But at the end of the day, I don't need to fucking see it.
Yeah.
Like being this excited about people in their mid-30s finding love, like that feels a little weird to me. Yeah. Especially when things like this are more prevalent.
Yeah. Well, so one of the things on my second trip, I went back and that was the goal, the 4 goals: live with, listen to, learn from, love them. And I had been named in a community. They gave me the name. So I've been given a few names like Efeosa, Mabutimangbo, and Olengama. And so Olengama, I got named after the Batwa king. That's his father's name. And so like they honored me with that, painted my head and lips and nose and chest and arms with literally the dirt from his grave and ash, and made this paste and paint and painted me with it. And it was like this super cool, surreal moment because we've helped him get land and water and food and other things. But Mabutimangbo means the big pygmy. So that's why I go by the big pygmy. Like when I came back to fighting and made the comeback, it was like, okay, instead of being the Viking, let's be the big pygmy, like the name they gave me. Efeosa was the first name they gave me, and that was the Efe pygmy people, and it means the man who loves us. And so I like treasure that name, personally. It means a lot to me. But that happened. And then I go to the neighboring community, which I had already connected with this mother and the son. And when I got back, he had taken a turn real quick and he was sick. And so she's sitting across from me, just like you're sitting across from me, and Andy Bo is in between us. And she puts my hand under his head and I'm holding his little hand. And like he took his last breath and blood came out of his ears and onto my hands. And it was my first time seeing a young boy, maybe 1.5 years old, like pass and die. And it was because of dirty water. It was waterborne disease, but also I would say prejudice or discrimination. Like the first time his mom took him to the hospital or clinic, it's maybe a mud hut with like, iron sheet roof. They said, "You're too dirty to come in here," to his mom. Second time, a whole community of people that are enslaved, 85 to 135 people is kind of what they normally live in. And that's kind of what a chief can manage. And so they begged. They don't get paid in money. They get paid in like bananas or peanuts or like literal, they call them G-nuts, but peanuts, or like a half bar of soap or something like that. So they begged for money. They got about $3.50 of Congolese franc. They took that to the hospital with a chicken and eggs and charcoal and firewood, took everything they could offer. And the pills were $1. The shot, it was too late in the game for the pills, so the shot was $3. And they took an abundance like to offer. And so they said, the doctor said the real reason, we won't waste our medicine on a pygmy animal and turn them away. And so I sent some of the team to go buy the shovel. That was $6. The casket was $30. And we, I helped dig the grave, and we dug the grave, and we had the funeral, and that just rocked me. Like it's $6, like double the treatment or the one-shot cure. And so I came back from that trip and I'm thinking, okay, well, this is the problem to solve: water. And we can solve it for them and their neighbors, because even the people from the tribes that are enslaving them, like they don't have access to clean water. Those people are making about $1 to $2 a day. They're not like this rich, these rich people. So what if we came back and were able to do that? And so for the next year, I'm trying to learn how to drill water wells. And I'm back and I go to my parents' house in the country I'm going to Home Depot, Lowe's, trying to buy tools. I literally did what probably any American would do, like Google how to drill a well.
Sure.
And I got howtodrillyourownwell.com or .org. And I'm trying this method that at the time I didn't know was not going to work at all there. Have a little bit of success, but things are breaking. I'm going back to Home Depot, Lowe's.
Are you drilling wells by hand?
Yeah. Because the thing is, one, fundraising for a $500,000 drilling rig is going to be pretty hard. Two, it's going to get beat up.
I feel like we could fabricate something.
Yeah. Augers, single prong, triple prong chisels.
Like if you had like an auger and like some form of like diesel generator.
Yeah.
Like off a tripod and this. Like I've seen people do some pretty amazing stuff with some pretty ridiculous shit.
I got engaged in Egypt with Matt and Bonnie there to Amy. And while we were at one of these spots, like they were doing that. They had the tripod and they had guys on it working with it, but it was mechanized too. I think it was running off diesel. Yeah. And so I brought them over there. I'm like, look at this. This is how we were kind of doing, except we had no motorized, mechanism. We were wrestling the earth. And so got trained on how to drill using augers. And I left and I went back. Well, actually, before I went, I was kind of one of these moments, I don't know if you call it 8 Mile moment, but I kind of said, I need to raise 70 grand and I need to get this equipment and that will support me for a year there. And I had this YouTube video up for, 8 months, 9 months. And then it just hit where one day I woke up, it was the number one thing on Reddit. They put it on the Today Show. It was on Jimmy Kimmel that night. It was the first time these African kids had ever seen a white guy before. It was me. And it had millions of views. And so Jimmy Kimmel saying, look at Justin Wren. He's being pet or UFC fighter Justin Wren being pet like a golden retriever. And then the next day I was on TMZ in real good company, right behind Honey Boo Boo and Lindsay Lohan, like sandwiched.
Oh boy.
I actually think Lindsay Lohan was first and then Honey Boo Boo up right after me.
I'm totally amazed by the long hair and the beard. For the fact that I would probably not want any body hair for the cleanliness factor.
Yeah. Well, my record in that year living there was pulling 5 roaches out of my beard in one night.
Yeah, like I would be like, there'd be so many fleas and things. I'd just be like, shave my head, shave everything.
But to cut your hair there, you don't have, they use razor blades. And my skin, I get those skin rashes or whatever whenever I shave. So I needed beard hair.
Yeah, bumps.
The bumps, yeah. So, and there it's...
And you're also pretty fair skin.
Yep. And I needed the hair to be sunblocked, basically.
Yeah.
But being there, the moment of drilling wells, well, I'll tell you this, I got there for 5 months and I took 15 check bags and luckily Qatar Airlines, they heard about what I was doing. So I was on TMZ and then Joe's like, what are you doing? Come on the show. So I go on the show and before I'm even off of it, we have the 70 grand. It's live. It was on, I forget if it was Ustream or YouTube at that time, but all the money comes in. I'm like, all right, and I'm going. And take off. They sponsored all the bags to take. I have all the augers, the rock breakers, single prong, triple prong chisels and the winches and ropes and everything. And I drive it in from Uganda.
How'd you get Congo. It on the plane? Did you actually ship it cargo or did it?
They let me check 15 bags that we all weighed out to 50 pounds. And I didn't pay for it.
And then
they were awesome.
And then you went to the airport where you were able to rent a vehicle. They didn't fly it in and drop it in or anything.
No, I rented a vehicle that would get me to the border and then my team in Congo picked me up. And then now we work on both sides and we can really invest actually heavily in Uganda for the structures and infrastructure, right? Which is it's tough in Congo right now. I was supposed to go back. I was actually supposed to be there instead of doing this podcast. And, they just said it went from 44 warring rebel groups to probably over 100 now, or around 100.
Where do they get their weapons?
I think it's in Congo, I think Uganda, Rwanda, all the surrounding countries are helping fund it because they get the resources. Yeah. But I have seen the, mercenary type people from the West that are around all the mines and things like that. Yeah. So I think they're getting a lot of it from, cause some of it looks real old. Some of it's pretty sophisticated stuff. Yeah. And
Well, does it benefit them to have these like rebel groups kind of like working like
some places I think it can. Some places I think it can because them and their tribe, which again is over 200, them and their tribe, and like all of a sudden it brings like some wealth. It can bring some wealth, but it also brings severe poverty and oppression, and it can be horrific too. So I think it depends, because most of these rebels that I've seen, there's older guys there, but a lot of them are kids, man. A lot of them are kids, and it's horrific to see. But we go and we start trying to drill, and we fail month 1, like 2 or 3 different spots. We fail month 2, 2 or 3 different spots. We fail month 3, 2 or 3 different spots. And everything is not working, breaking. And at month 5, I'm just like pretty beaten down. And feel like I'm having zero success. I'm basically a white belt well driller trying to teach other white belts the manual drilling method, because we can't drive a truck in there. It's deep in the rainforest. There are no roads. We're hiking in 1 ton of well drilling equipment, which is like bags of cement and bags of gravel and bags of bricks. Like we're hiking all this shit in, trying to get a well, and then it fails, and then we have to hike all that shit back out. And sometimes the village might be an hour off the road, maybe 2 hours, maybe 3 hours off the road. And it takes 2 days to get the equipment in. And so then I get malaria and I get basically care flighted out to Uganda. Well, they missed it for 5 days. They were using these quick tests that were expired. And I lost 33 pounds in 5 days. I was vomiting by day 3 or 4, I was vomiting red and green, which was like blood and bile. I had something called black water fever, which I think if we Googled the fact, it would like 25% to 50% of people that get black water fever die. And black water fever is when basically your kidneys are failing, your liver's failing. Like I couldn't urinate for 5 full days. Whenever I finally could, it was as dark as you are my shirt, and it was sticky, and it freaked me out.
Yeah,
sludge. It was like sludge. And so my peripheral vision disappeared. In front of me is just blurry. I couldn't make out my team who's in front of me. I could barely hear. It sounded like a bee's hive in my ears. And my team's like, you're going to die unless we get you to Uganda. So I fly with one pilot, me, on like a 3 or 4 seater plane. Get out, I'm there, and I call Papa Y. So I didn't share about Papa Y, our team leader there. He's kind of like the foremost expert on the pygmy people. He started living there with them the year I was born. Mm-hmm. And he's a professor and a doctor in community development. So he's like, if you come, you got to come with some real skills. And so that was the water well drilling. I called Papa Y from the phone, and I'm just like, I don't know that I can keep going. Like I'm a fighter, and I don't quit. But I haven't had any success, and like I'm failing the team. I'm failing you. I'm almost dying. He's like, hey man, white people, Mzungus, they don't handle malaria well. If you were to leave, no one would blame you. But if you leave, like our team's going to lose hope, and you got to come back in here and get one success in, and then we can bring some other people. He's like, but I'm going to call someone that has done this method, that's further along the road than us, and let's see if he'll come and or at least take a phone call. So his name was B-Tech. I get back to Uganda, and we start trying to drill this well, and we open up. We were actually trying to go through fucking sandstone, which was basically eating up our tools, dulling every auger. And we open it up into this, like, I don't know, rectangle. We get about 7-8 feet deep. And I'm like, we're not leaving. Like, this is actually the community that named me Efeosa. I'm like, this is where the well's going. We picked up and moved a football field, And then all of a sudden it's like, here we go. This is the spot. We're not going to take no for an answer. We probably broke over 20 pickaxes trying to break through the sandstone layer. We were using chisels and hammers, trying to just chip away at it. And so Chabusiku is the one that gave me the name Efeosa. Her father is Jelawa, her husband is Manu, her sister's Macho. They had a son, Babo. And anyways, this kid got sick, and another young boy dies. And literally what was supposed to become the water well became his grave. and it was supposed to be a life-giving source. And instead it's where we're burying him. And that just like crushed me. And I thought, I'm done. I can't continue doing this. I'm letting everyone down. I'm letting myself down, them. And like, I feel like I'm steering them. I'm giving them hope. And every time we fail, like the looks on their faces and like it's just, it's disappointing. And, that's when BTEC entered the picture. The guy that had over 100 wins under his belt in a black belt in well drilling. And he came in and all he did was a few minor changes to our process. One of them was big. It was, we were going through all these collapsing zones in the rainforest besides that one with the sandstone layer. And you dig like on the beach, right? You dig deeper, you dig in sand, like it collapses in on itself. And, or digging a post hole, like the first foot's pretty easy. The next 2 or 3 feet get pretty hard. And we're going, 30, 40, 50, 60 feet deep, up to 150 feet deep. And BTEC comes in and we're using a casing pipe, but we can't ever get that shit down deep enough. And he brings this platform. He actually welds it, puts it on there. Him and I, BTEC's actually probably more your size than my size. He weighs probably 280. I'm 260. He's 6'5", 6'4" at least. And we're on this platform that's literally 8, 10, 12 feet off the ground sometimes because it's 20-foot tall pipes. We're having to build ladders to get up on this thing. And we start drilling down and we keep going. And just the minor changes he made worked. Our weight would take this platform down with the casing pipe. And we'd put another casing pipe on it. We'd put the platform up. We'd keep going down. We're wrestling the earth. And now all of a sudden we're deeper than we ever been. 60,
Is he welding the casing pipes on top of each other? And then you're spinning the casing pipe?
So the casing pipe was about an 8-inch, 8 to 10 inch PVC.
So
then it's a metal platform that we're putting on, and we would tighten it on.
Yeah.
And then we'd stand on top of this platform that's just flat. It's just barely wide enough, shoulder feet deep.
What's actually drilling the hole?
The augers.
So
we have augers with a square pipe on the end, and we had these handles we'd put into the square pipe.
Every time it goes deeper, you just basically put another one on.
We'd go about a Folgers coffee can deep,
and
then have to pull that shit up out of like 60 feet deep, and that would go down. And then we'd do it again, and we'd empty the auger, and it was almost like a NASCAR pit crew, where the two guys drilling, we'd pull the auger out, and someone would change it, put a new auger on, or empty it. We'd drop it back down, and we just keep going. And this thing would take a week, 10 days, more. But we finally get to about 80, 90 feet deep. And I'm looking at BTEC for some sort of sign. The community's all surrounding us like our cheerleaders. And we finally, the augers just felt different. And we pull it up and there's it's moist, it's water. We keep going. There's more and more water, and the water starts to come up. And then we just keep going. I'm looking for some sort of sign, and BTEC finally gives me a sign, he lets out this big roar, we've got it. And so then it goes into a 3-day process of you got to develop the well, you got to plunge and bail, you got to set the pipe with these slits in there, you got to set the pump, then you got to do the cement casing and everything at the top. But man, when that water came out on the celebration day, I've been to the Super Bowl. I've been to the World Series. I've been to the NBA Finals. I've been to UFC 100, 200, probably going to 300. And it's a community getting clean water for the first time. I remember the first day, first celebration of the first well. It was like the crowd of 150 people drowned out the Super Bowl. It was different, right? It wasn't maybe as loud, but the energy was different. I know the energy from a fight and a win and getting my hand raised. And I remember those times of, especially in addiction, getting my hand raised, thinking is this it? Is that all? There's got to be something more. Sometimes I get my hand raised and I think, so what? Or I think, now what? And for me, that victory is a victory over, it's a victory over death. The sound of the water filling up a jerry can or a cup is kind of like the sound of, the giants they've been facing on the battlefield is E. coli or cholera or whatever these waterborne illnesses and bacterias and are.
Is the water like underground aquifers?
Yeah.
Is it?
So that's what we broke through too with BTEC. And that's when he let out the roar, like we hit the aquifer.
Is there any like, I mean, fuck, dude, I keep thinking like there has to be scans or there has to be some form of aerial scans to know where to go.
Yeah. Yeah. So you can, when you become more advanced, when you're not a white belt, you can kind of read the surroundings and you can kind of know where it's going to be.
Sure.
And in the rainforest, it's pretty easy to hit water. But now there's these VES machines that we use, vertical electronic sound, that then you just have a laptop and these like little probes and basically a car battery.
Dude, they do the same thing here in Texas.
Yeah.
Like when they dug our well, they come out with all these probes and hey, like this is, like we've surveyed the property. This is where we feel. I mean, we're lucky because Little Barton Creek's right there.
Yeah.
And the aquifer and all that. So we have water. And, but yeah, I mean, there's a pretty scientific approach.
Yeah. And now we've got like, trailers that drill wells behind a truck. We'll contract with or buy, the big mechanized rigs. And that was 13 years ago. And if we go, our last well, Matt was there, and actually that wasn't our last well, but like 2 or 3 wells ago, it was this mountain community where they were literally rock climbing for water. And it's in the rainforest, but above the rainforest. And the way that they were climbing, a woman had fallen and died, collecting water, and children had fallen and breaking their legs. And there's like literally kind of mountain medics that know how to set stuff whenever, you fall and break stuff. But this is how they're climbing to collect water. And man, they're going 60 feet, 80 feet up. You can see that she's barefoot.
Yeah.
She's got a jerry can in one hand. She's got a cup in the other. There's kids doing this, women doing this. Matt and I tried to do this water walk. We couldn't do it. Like we went to water point 1. This was the dry season. And so we went to water point 1. It was dry. And we're like scaling the sides of cliffs. We go to water point 2, which is higher. That was dry. We went higher to water point 3. And when we got there, it was stagnant, and it would take 30 minutes to fill up your jerry can, because you get the cup and then you pour it in and then it's got bugs and shit all in it. So then they're like, okay, we would have to go down to water point 4, which is down the mountain. I'm like, why would y'all go up? And they're like, because it's easier to carry water down than it is to carry water up. So now that water point 3, and this was a day that they found like, okay, actually like yesterday was probably the last day for this water point. So we go all the way down. I mean, this was like an 6-hour trek. We get down to the water point. Matt and I were not the smartest. I took this, which maybe 1.5 liters. And he took one and Brant took one, and we finished it all. And Brant, we thought, had a Camelback with like an extra 2 or 3 liters. He forgot to fill that. And so we get down to water point 4, and my team is like, no, y'all can't drink that. Like, you just can't. Like, so we got to carry this shit up. I told Matt, I've done at least 15 of these water walks. I've completed them all. Like, you're a big, strong guy. Let's do this. And that water walk up after all that shit was, I've climbed Mount Kilimanjaro, or hiked Mount Kilimanjaro. This one day was harder than all those days together. The sun's beating down on you. We're at 8,000 feet, maybe a little higher. And we're trying to carry back 2 jerry cans that, when each one of them is 20 liters, that's 5 gallons. That's 44 pounds. Yeah. So it was brutal. It took us 6 men to get back 4 jerry cans, basically. And I was just like, how have they ever been doing this? Right? Survival.
Yeah.
Like they're only doing it because they have to. And so for that community, we created 13 kilometers of road where it's never existed before, because they couldn't, like, we had to find a solution. So it's like, make a way, find a way. What we do is we try to equip people with the tools, educate them with the knowledge, and empower them to do it for themselves. This was a little different because we had to get a truck in, because we had to go deep in the mountains. We had to go over 300 feet deep. I think it was more like 400 feet deep. So yeah, we brought in the graders and the bulldozers and everything to clear the land where only footpaths had existed. Mm-hmm. And we opened it up to where now there's a working road where people can get to the hospital. The hospital is still a 2.5 hour hike, and most of them don't have vehicles. And so my last trip, in December, I was down with malaria again, and I was at a clinic, and one of the women went into labor early, and her baby was turned the wrong way and it was breached, and so lost both the child and the mother. But that's why we're bringing the health center to them with the maternity ward and everything else. But I guess I share that story with Matt because I do want to, I bet he's going to listen to this, and I want to say thank you to him because he's been such a gift to us. Because like I told him the story, but now that he's seen him, now he's met him, now he's been there twice, he spent time with him. There was a time we were looking over the new land with the homes and everything, and I got misty eyed because I'm like, wow, look at where we've come from 13 years ago, and look at, you know, their lives now. And Matt just grabbed me on the shoulder, and I was thinking that. He goes, look at this, man. Like this is pretty epic. Like this is what Fight for the Forgotten's done, and this is what they've done for themselves. And we did the trip a little in reverse. I wish I would have flipped it on them, because we went straight to the new land, and on our way out, I took them to the old land where they used to live. And in Uganda, they were evicted from the rainforest and put on 1 acre of land behind the slum. And it's over 300 people living on less than 1 acre of land, or like allowed to live on this and sleep in other places too.
What happened in Uganda? They declared it all like a natural forest, or national forest, and just booted them off the land. Yeah,
there's some organizations that are, you know, rainforest preservation and animal conservation, and the government there said that, you know, we have to protect the forest, we have to protect the animals. But they kicked out the protectors of the forest and the people that have lived there for thousands and thousands of years. Some anthropologists say the pygmy people are probably the oldest people group still surviving today. And it's between them and one other group. And they're the most sustainable people in the world. So why in the name of sustainability kick out the most sustainable people?
Man, like anything I've ever read, and I can't say, you know, like my knowledge of Africa is extensive, but you know, like, I mean, everything from like the hot zone and all the stuff that I've read, it feels like people are opportunistic in nature, and whoever, like, you know, like all of a sudden now I have power, so like now I got to lord over other people. And if you look at just the oppression, and like every person that gets into power gets there by blood. And by death, and use it, and they lord. And, you know, at that point, like, you know, you see the pictures of these African dictator, you know, rulers, and they're driving around, they're like gold everywhere. The opulence is fucking crazy. And you know, I mean, and they are fucking, like, the brutality is unreal.
And then it gets super complex too with even the government officials, because sometimes they want bribes. We don't pay bribes. We just don't do it. We will not. So, but then maybe some of the reality of the situation comes where this last trip, we're getting new land titles, and they're like, hey, like, come to my office. And you go to the office, they don't have ink in their printer. His computer won't turn on. I'm trying to turn it on for him. He's like, I'm trying to do these land titles when I'm asking for this fee. Literally, I'm going to use it to go buy ink for the printer, and I need to get my computer to be able to turn back on. So it's like, oh, okay, man, like maybe there's a way we can help with a new laptop that's $200-300. Maybe we can bring some ink for the printer, right? And so lots of complex issues, but my last trip was truly my best trip in 13 years because of all the progress, like finally real deal progress. I mean, water's always been progress, and we've always made these strides, but now it's like, oh, wait, we actually have the backing of the local, the state, the national government, and they want us to do this work now. They're not just thanking us, but they're like allowing us to proceed and move. And normally we ask for permission, but also we say, this is what we're going to do. And because it's forward progress, like normally they just let us do it. And so while being like a real nonprofit within the nation and doing everything right, you know, it can be slow, but like finally, like, oh, okay, the next phase, I think, well, if we use the name New Wave, I think there needs to be a new wave of charity brought into the world. And it's not just the handouts, or it's not just being siloed. I think that we've created these partnerships with other NGOs, people trying to do it right, that have a long history, that that I respect and admire, because there's a lot I don't. But we've invited them to do what they do best. And it used to be people were guarded, or people were protective of their donors, their projects, whatever, or me being called a lone ranger, a lone wolf out there trying to do my own thing. And I'm like, hey, wait, come, like, look at what we're doing. Like, this is awesome. And I'm not good at this. You're good at this. What if we did this here?
Sure.
But now it's like, we have the founder of Engineers Without Borders on our board. He sent out over 17,000 engineers. He has said this is his legacy project, that we're not just meeting one need, we're trying to do everything. What is not just a surviving community, but hopefully a thriving or a happy, healthy, thriving community need? And there's some basics, right? Like you need land, you need water, you need food, shelter. Yeah. And then you need healthcare, education, and sustainable livelihoods. So what we've done now is, instead of going just a mile wide, we want to go a mile deep in one community. We've already selected the second community, but it's like, let's do a proof of concept that we can do all of this. Yesterday, I was on a meeting with a reforestation nonprofit that's going to come in and try to bring the forest back to them on their own land, so that it's like they've always lived before. Mm-hmm. We have a fish pond going in. It's going to have tens of thousands of fish, and sustainable livelihoods of welding. We're teaching those trades to the people so that they can, have a job to support themselves. When they built their own homes, like seeing dads participate, like building their own home, but also learning that to go take out and teach others how to build other homes, be hired for it. Yeah. So it's been fun, man. Like, it's been a long road, but it's been well worth it. Like, if I look at it, what's a worthy fight? What's a worthy cause? Like, these people are so badass. They're awesome. I love them. And they've just been waiting and hungry and asking for the opportunity. And whenever you come in and provide a little bit of it by asking questions and them making suggestions and it being their idea, like King and Zito, this all started from him having a stick, a walking stick, and drawing it in the dirt, in the sand. Land, water, food, healthcare, education, sustainable livelihoods. It's like, that's a great plan, with participation of the elders and the women in the community. And it's like, okay, this is really formulating into like a vision, a written vision. So we took it from the dirt to like writing it out, to then like really thinking all about it. And I had the master plan just presented to me, and it's going to be something pretty special there. It's going to be pretty epic.
How many people are in this first phase?
People?
Yeah. Like you're like, you talked about like that first tribe that you guys want to do. Like, how many people are in that?
Well, it's going to serve, I think, minimum 3,000 up to 5,000 people.
Wow.
Yeah. And now of the Batwa community there. So I took Matt back to that original piece of land, and we were stepping over mounds, and I had to tell Matt, like, this is where they buried their dead too. They were given this spot to live, but also they were given no spot to bury anybody. And that's when I asked King, I'm like, what are these mounds to, when I first visited there? He's like, they don't give us anywhere to bury our dead. Like, we live on top of our dead. We cook on top of our dead. We walk on top of our dead. And so, I mean, when I told Matt that was the time I first saw him like get teary eyed. Right. And he was talking with, Julius, their kind of spokesperson. And because Matt had this idea of like, now they have these big brick concrete homes and metal doors and bars on the windows. And Matt's like, doesn't that feel like, I don't know, it doesn't feel like they're kind of in prison? And I'm like, ask him what he thinks. And Julius, what about these homes now? They're bigger, but they got the metal on them and stuff. And he goes, no, whenever I'm not there, I know my wife and my kids are protected. He goes, when we lived here, like, we had a rice bag as the door. We slept on the rice bags, and like, people from the local community could come in and attack my wife or attack my kids. And I was like, Julius, you got to say what attack means. And he's like, they would get raped. They would get, abused. And so now if he's in there, they're safe. If he's not there, they're safe. And so of there was over 300 there, and it dwindled down to, I think, it's either 158 or 168 people from the Batwa, pygmy people there. But so
How many pygmies are there
in the world.
Yeah.
It's a complex thing because there's not a real good census.
Yeah.
But in Congo, there's 400 to 600,000.
Oh.
In Uganda, there's only a few thousand. In Rwanda, they're across 8 or 9 African nations.
Sure.
So from Central African Republic, kind of probably the most north.
They're not adhering to borders.
Yeah, anywhere the Congo Basin rainforest is, that's where they are.
Yeah, that's where their people have lived.
And so both Congos, there's the DRC and the RC, the Republic of Congo, Democratic Republic of Congo, Cameroon, Gabon, Burundi, Rwanda, and I'm missing one or two, but there's the biggest part is probably Congo, Central African Republic, and the other Congo. Gabon has a lot, and Cameroon. But in Rwanda, a lot of people don't know this, that when the Hutu and the Tutsi fought, the genocide there, 1 million people in 100 days died. Almost 100,000 were the Batwa pygmy people. Both sides were killing them, trying to exterminate them, take them off.
So are the pygmies all Batwas or Batwas?
So the Batwa are so the pygmy people is kind of like the greater group.
Okay. So are there smaller tribes in the pygmies?
Yes. So there's the Batwa in Burundi, Rwanda, Uganda. There's some of the Twa in DRC. But in DRC, there's the Mabuti, the FA, and there's another. In like Cameroon and Gabon, it's the Baka, Aka, Bayaka. So, but they're all the smaller people group of the pygmy people that are all in the same tribe.
Isn't it fucking wild that size is like the deciding factor? Mm-hmm. Like if all of a sudden you like, I don't know, all gave a magic pill and they were all 6'5".
Yeah.
Wouldn't it like, and they were all just like all of a sudden 6'5". Like it feels like, man, like
should we bring a gym? We might be able to do a gym there.
We could just do a gym there and just get them, or like stretch them or something, put them on boards. But you think about like in the animal kingdom, and I recently saw like a pretty cool video where they had tigers, and I think it was like a Siberian tiger in, and the Siberian tiger is like dramatically bigger than the other cats. So like the other cats like obviously had their hierarchy. All of a sudden this cat shows up that's like 1.5 times bigger than all the other cats, brand new, comes in. All the other cats like just laid down. And, I mean, he didn't attack anybody. He just walked through and the other cats knew, holy shit, this is a way bigger cat. Yeah. Like I need to submit.
Yeah.
So there's kind of an interesting piece. I mean, because like I now this is probably my fault. Because I was 6'4" when I was like 16, and I grew to be 6'6" by the time I was 20. So I've been pretty tall, like 6 foot when I was 13. I've always been pretty tall. So I don't remember what it was like to be short, even when I was young and I was, like even when I was 5'8", I was still tall because I was tall, young for tall for my age. So I don't necessarily know what it was like to be little. And I've always lifted weights and been a big dude since I first found them at 14. But it's pretty fascinating that you like within the animal kingdom in here, like there are somehow like lesser people because they're smaller people and they're picked on or oppressed or whatever because they're little and they can't defend themselves. Whereas in this country, like, I mean, jujitsu, all the other stuff. I mean,
there's the equalizers.
Yeah, there's equalizers. There's guns. There's bats and weapons, and these guys don't have access to any of this. So how does a little person defend themselves against it? I mean, as I'm talking about it, all I ever think about is Captain America. So Steve Rogers was like the little skinny nerd. I'm sure you saw that in the Marvel deal. Yeah. And then they give him some magic steroid. Yeah. I can juice him with a bunch of radiation, and then all of a sudden he turns into like Captain America, which is such the irony of that one's fucking amazing, right? Speaking of which, did you see that Peter Thiel is now funding a deal to have a non-drug tested steroid version of the Olympics? Oh, yeah. Which is going to be hilarious because they're going to let those guys take all the drugs and the numbers aren't going to be any better than our Olympics. All of a sudden they're going to go out and run and they're going to be slower than our Olympics and they're going to be like, what the fuck? But it's just such an interesting phenomenon that these people in this deal.
What's unique is tribes next to them. Some of them like dwarf me. And there it's unique. I don't think I've ever talked about this, but people know what tribe you're from instantaneously. Yeah. Like they'll know from your melanin, basically your facial structure.
Yeah. Like,
and your height.
like Francis Ngannou is from Cameroon. Cameroon.
And he's a gigantic human, and the pygmy people exist there too, right? And
well,
so
it's so you've obviously like in school we were taught evolution, right? And I think to some extent, but I also realized that like there's different versions of humanity. I mean, they found like the Darwinians, you know, they were a group of little midgets that they found on some island that were these little humanoids that were really small. And then they found, you know, Neanderthals, and there's been this different kind of like, you know, we're Homo sapiens, right? But there's been these different kind of versions of humanity over time. And what's wild is they all coexisted at the same time.
wow.
You know, so Neanderthals lived at the same time as, you know, Homo sapiens and Homo erectus, and you go kind of this evolutionary deal. And it would make sense that there's kind of different versions of humanity, just like there's different versions of other animals.
Yeah.
And they all live in this, and then eventually they just kind of went out, and Homo sapiens have just kind of won out for the mere fact that we were probably pretty sharp, pretty good hunters, and we just either assimilated or killed all these other ones. But you think in Africa, like you said, I mean, there's other versions of humanity, like you said, that are big, strong people, and these little people, and they're like, oh, let's beat up on the little ones.
Yeah. What's unique is I've learned a few Swahili proverbs that have been kind of guiding lights in my life at different phases. Whenever I thought about, you know, I was sick and thought about throwing in the towel, Papa Y told me a Swahili proverb, and I'm literally battling malaria. He said, you know, we tell our children, if you think you're too small to make a difference, try to sleep in a closed room with a mosquito. And it's tongue in cheek, right?
Yeah.
But whenever I thought about it in that moment, I'm like, man, I have fought dudes 6'7", 6'8", 6'10", and none of them have kicked my ass like this little mosquito that weighs less than a gram. And whatever is actually in that mosquito, the parasite that's like super small inside of that. So like, who am I to like count myself out or the team out that like, we can't figure this out and get it. The team and the Mabuti Pygmy people told me a Swahili proverb. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
Sure.
A lot of people know that one, but they live it, breathe it. It's, I think, in their DNA more. Like, I think sometimes we have lost that. Maybe athletes have been more attuned to it because we live in these like kind of tribes, but they're like, they suffer together, they struggle together, they celebrate together, they do everything together. And it's really unique. Like whenever I'm living in a twig leaf hut like that, and there's some sort of dispute, and there's not many, but you know, an argument between say a husband and wife or like two guys in the community, there's no privacy there. Like you're not in your big house and like separated rooms and like closing doors and like nobody knows that this is happening. There, like everyone knows it's happening. And the chief or the elders or the men and the women will bring that person to the fire. And we'll sit down and have a conversation. And how do we solve this? How do we work it out? And like, we're here to support you. And it's a beautiful thing. Another one they told me, and because I've struggled with addiction, this one resonated with me, is if there is no enemy within, the opponent, I think it's the opponent. If there is no enemy within, the opponent on the outside can do us no harm. And like, for me, that's almost like self-mastery, right? Like if there's no enemy within, the enemy on the outside can do us no harm. So I guess whether that's for me, addiction, or maybe it's someone with social media. It's like, hey, the stuff going on the outside, really like, don't allow that. It's outside your hula hoop. Don't allow that to affect you so much because it's not in your control.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've never seen a time in my life where people are so concerned with things that they have no ability to affect change on. Like you can only affect change on those things you can touch.
Yeah.
You know, so a lot of social media, I mean, I've always been fascinated with politics and more importantly, like constitutional, like the government piece has always been interesting to me. And I've always been like some of my favorite writings are from our founding fathers. The fact that you had these individuals come over here and like have this vision and were able to kind of hack it out and build it and fight. And like, you know, the fact that our founding fathers sat down and wrote this document. Now you can say it was either good or bad, but I mean, the fact that they wrote a document that 250 years later has resulted in probably the most powerful, greatest nation to ever work on this planet.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing.
It's amazing.
Well, just to have something, they had no perception of what was coming. And the fact that they could pen a document that had the ability to be able to live and breathe and could be adjusted, and their original vision was correct. But the problem is that, the influence of, capitalism, we don't have capitalism in this country. We have corporatism, they just, by the way that things are written within, no term limits, and that our politicians can be bought and paid for by corporations, which is well established. So they're not representing us as the individual; they're representing the constituents, which are really the people that pay their salary, which are the corporations. So there's a whole bunch of fixes we could to it, but if they fixed it, then they couldn't make the money they needed to make, and so there's no reason for it. But we're in this weird kind of corporatism deal. And, people are up in arms in this, but yet people do nothing to evoke change other than just go on social media and bitch about it.
Yeah.
You're like, well, no, you support the corporations. The fact that you have social media means you're supporting the algorithm. You guys are doing everything for this. And more importantly, you guys are going back and electing these people.
Yeah.
Because anybody with actually any real intelligence doesn't want to be anywhere near politics.
Right.
The only people that are getting into politics realize, holy shit, look at that honeypot. Do you know how much money I can make if I go in there? If you can win as a congressman or a senator, your access to information, which I have a pretty rich friend that I do some consulting stuff for. And I told him, if you really wanted to be uber rich, I'm telling you, the richest of the rich, what you do is you back some young kid or young guy who, into politics, and then get there and be like, all I need you to do is just give me stock tips. I just need you to put me into play. And there's a guy I follow on Instagram. His entire platform is he tracks all of the trading for all the Nancy Pelosi and the politicians. Yeah. And he just basically in real time, hey, they made this trade, you should make this trade too. And the guy's basically just done here's the top 10 producers in Washington DC are elected officials. I'm monitoring all of their trade accounts. Just do their trades and you'll be rich. That's a real thing. And that feels so fucking disingenuous to me. But then you think okay, to invoke change, what do I have to do? Do I have to run? Just sitting at home bitching about it? We still pay our taxes, but yet we don't think that the government's fiscally responsible and doing things to help, humanitarian efforts. They decide which it is and we're in a weird place. But I really think we've gotten to this place where, for example, over 10 years ago, we started a cancer charity, Wade's Army. My wife, friend from school, had twins. The little boy, she had boy-girl twins. Little boy ended up passing away from neuroblastoma. And then we had twins. So then we started Wade's Army, and we raised money for neuroblastoma. And it's by far the most disheartening thing we could have ever have done, for the fact that, we support these kids in this, and then we end up losing them.
Yeah.
And you see how ugly the cancer deal is. These trials and this, and these people and this hope, and then they lose the kids, and you're like this is awful.
Yeah.
And you have to relive it. And, it's, you're just hoping that you can save one and do well and think is this year going to be different, which is kind of what you're talking about, where you go there and you're trying to make progress, and one step forward, it's 10 steps back. And this, it's just a testament, the fact that you have been, it's probably too many hits to the fucking head and just too stupid to give up, but just this blind ability to be we can improve upon the nature and give these people an opportunity that nobody's going to do. It's amazing, dude. It's an amazing story.
I appreciate it. Yeah. Honestly, it's been the hardest, but it's absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt, been the best too, because even in fighting, you have to be, training, jiu-jitsu, right? You have to be well-rounded.
Yeah.
And so you can't just be a master in one thing. And so we started with water, and I think we do a damn good job there. And now it's okay, let's learn from some of the best in class that do this, and that, and let's put these puzzle pieces together for this one community, do it as a proof of concept. We've got the second one already. My in-country director is there doing a scout trip right now and is meeting the next group of Batawa peoples to affect the Batawa Pygmy people and their neighbors. That's why this group might only be 158, 168 of the Batawa Pygmy people, but it's going to serve over 3,000 up to 5,000 people. And let's do the second one too. And let's do it as a proof of concept to see if we can scale and grow this thing where we knock out one community at a time, or, maybe we can do two at a time. And then also open source this to where we have like Zoe's a badass and she's a lot of the brains behind Fight for the Forgotten. And I'll be like, hey, we need to really look into this. And is this going to work? She'll come back with a 58-page feasibility study, right? A viability study, looking at all the pros and cons and everything else. But now we have that documented to where we can say, when we go to the next one, we can refer back to this,
Sure.
But also we can open source it, and whether it's an online thing or what, and Matt's helping with the video. Yeah. And it's like, we do this to where if other people want to do it, whether it's in Uganda or Congo or wherever it is, or maybe it's in the Philippines or Indonesia.
Do you think people want you to do this?
The people there?
Well, I know the people there do. I just look at it like and I'll give you like my Dr. Evil.
Sure.
Right. Like, so if I'm with Dr. Evil and I'm, realize that, Africa is this amazing place with all of these natural resources and all these other things. And there's all this infighting and lack of infrastructure and all this. So then I can kind of slither my way through and rape and pillage and, strip mine and do all this gnarly shit. Like, the last thing I want to do is probably bring a bunch of like infrastructure and hope to a bunch of people that I'm just trying to basically bilk for all their natural resources and get out alive.
Yeah.
So
I think so far, well, do the people there want it? Absolutely.
Well, yeah,
you know that.
Yeah, because they want a better life for their children.
Yeah.
I mean, this is what's universal in this world, and it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter if you're a pygmy here or a person here. Everybody wants a better life for their kids. Like we were talking about earlier, like the humanitarian crisis, like it's not a border crisis, it's a humanitarian crisis. Mm-hmm. And the fact that I don't know if building walls is the right thing. I don't know what that fucking how you fix that problem. Other than the fact that you can't just let everybody come. You got to find a way to be able to separate the wheat from the shaft, right? Like, if there's bad people coming, you got to let the families this, but you got kids. I mean, it's just a fucking disaster.
Yeah.
But there has to be a process. And you have to be able to tell people hey, here you are, this is how we help. I mean, you have to be a fucking human.
Yeah.
And I think what happens so much and so often, and from kind of what it sounds like to me, is that if you can remove humanity from things, it's really easy to be fucking really ugly.
Yeah.
So all these, they're animals, this, I mean, it's the ugliness, but it's really the dehumanization. If you can dehumanize people, you can do fucking ugly stuff.
Yeah. So here's been what I think has been our.
But I was saying what's great about Matt coming on for the videos and you doing all this, it brings a spotlight to the the forgotten.
Right.
So now you're humanizing them and making them into be real people, which effectively gives them voice, gives them power, and makes them realize there's people in the world that know who we are.
Yeah.
And no longer can the genocide or the ugliness come at them because people have a spotlight on it.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I think for me, you said I've been hit in the head too many times, and I have.
I have too. So you're in good company.
I'm excited that I know now, especially after this last trip, there's always been light at the end of the tunnel, but actually seeing it physically right there, it's this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. There's no ifs, ands, or buts, and I'm committed to it. They are too. And we've got some real traction. And so I don't think anything's going to derail this. There's always going to be obstacles and challenges, but we're going to adjust and continue to fine tune and become well-rounded to where we see a need, we meet that need in a long-term sustainable way, not short-term. We don't even really sometimes we take those into consideration, of course, but most time it's if it's not a long-term change, we don't want to do it because we've seen the crippling effect it can have on a community. One, to get a water well. On this last trip, one of the defeating things was I normally don't count the broken wells, but I saw more broken wells than I saw working wells.
With is it just worn out parts?
Yeah, mostly.
Just maintenance?
Yeah, but it can also be a terrible job from the beginning. I saw one that was, okay, if you think of a dice and you roll a number 5, think about the 4 on the outside, there's one in the center. The 4 on the outside were fucking gas pumps, man. And the one in the middle, they had drilled a well right there. So it's at a gas station and it's serving these kids that are from school. It's I stopped at this gas station because I needed to take a leak. And I go to the bathroom and it's a latrine. It's a latrine within 20 meters from this water well. There's gas pumps all around it. I look behind, while I'm taking a leak, I can see out of the window. That was the light. It wasn't a real light inside. Outside there was a trash dump. I look in there and there's like motor oil and batteries and all sorts of stuff that's just sitting there in the trash dump. That's less than 50 meters from this well. It doesn't matter how deep that well is. Like it's polluted. Yeah, so they did that wrong. And, but most of the time it's charities come in with like a big quota and there's no relationship with the community. Right. And so they punch a hole in the ground. I call it the blow up, or blow in, blow out.
They blow in, they take a bunch of pictures. Look how much money we raised.
Here, we announce our arrival with a parade.
Yeah.
We throw a party, we get the pictures and we bail.
Yeah. And then the same thing we ran into with charities was, and I the charity thing can be either really good or bad. Mm-hmm. We looked at charities and all of a sudden you're like, tries to raising money. And I realized these people need to eat. But all of a sudden these people are like making $1 million. And you're like, I don't know if I could work for a charity and take home a big fucking salary unless you were raising like, the Susan B. Komen Foundation raises, fucking $100 million.
Yep.
But they're spending, tens of millions of dollars on the NFL and the Gallia and this. Like, how much are they really giving?
Yep.
I don't know, but I know that those people are making some pretty big dough. And, they're able to fundraise and they're the people that can bring big donors up. So like, I'm not casting shade on like that group. But I think a lot of these people, and this is something why I had one of the reservations against nonprofits in the beginning in the NFL, because we'd always get invited to these events and they would like, we're going to go golfing or we're going to go fishing. You're going to go to these like amazing events, and they fly us in and we go to it. And then at the end of the year, you realize they only give out like $10,000 or $20,000, but then everybody's, their mom, their dad, their brothers and their sisters and all the family and everybody's on the board and everybody gets a payroll or a salary, and they can only have to donate X amount of dollars to stay in this. And you're like, okay, so this is just a vehicle for people to raise money, have a good party, and pay everybody. And I just thought that was really disingenuous. So when we went to go start our own nonprofit, I was like, we got to give all this money away. And we're going to, we ended up.
It's awesome.
I mean, like you have to do good stuff. And it's, but then
I was saying you did something with the trucks you'd build. What's that?
Yeah. So we did, last year we built a 1975 K5 Blazer, and we sold auction tickets for $100. So we raised 80,000.
Whoa.
And then we ended up just selecting a name and giving it to a dude.
Wow.
Out in California. I was secretly hoping somebody I knew, I didn't know the guy personally. He was a friend of Heather and my wife that they knew from high school, lives out in California. I was praying that somebody I knew bought it locally so I could see it all the time.
Yeah.
Because we built it like it was frame off. Like we painted it. I mean, we did everything. Like it was literally, if you had taken it to the shop, it would have been like $100,000 build.
Wow.
For the fact that like we did a frame off, we painted it. I mean, we did everything. We fixed all the rust. I mean, got all the parts donated, put a motor. I mean, the thing was badass.
That's awesome.
We ended up just giving it away. So I was like secretly hoping we went through and like we picked the name, and I was like, I don't know that name. Can I repick? And my wife's like, we can't repick. We just, because we were videoing.
Yeah.
But I was praying somebody like Matt wanted or any of the people I knew, just so that I got a chance to see it, because I was so sad to see it drive away,
Yeah.
But we're going to do another one this year.
That's awesome.
With Wade's Army, and I even said to Kate, I'm like, I'd love to be able to branch out and do more stuff and be able to like have power. They'd have like a fundraising arm and select something new each year. So I think maybe going forward, what we'll do is, like something like, if we find a charity we really like, build a truck and do kind of that every year for a different charity.
That's incredible.
Yeah. And just,
good luck with that. It's going to be great.
Yeah, it'll be fun. And what's amazing is people really dig cars.
Yeah.
Because one, they're cool in the pictures. They get to drive around in it. Like there's this, like, I'm not good at marketing. Matt's probably much better at it. You're probably shitty like marketing like me.
Yeah.
Like I can build the stuff, but they were like, hey, we need it built like 6 months ahead of time. And we need to campaign it and take it all these places. We literally like finished it, like got it running, driving, and then like gave it away within like a month. And they were like, you had to do, like we made one video. So I need to be way better on the marketing side too.
Yeah. Maybe Matt can help on the next one you do. And man, if it's ever an opportunity for us, we would absolutely love that. We'll put it to good use, but there's no pressure on it. And I'm excited to know you, and this is really great. I'm excited you're helping some of my friends and family, and man, Victor's doing awesome. And
he's really come a long way.
Yeah.
It was a good win for him. I would have liked to seen him fucking beat the shit out of Nicky Rod a little bit more. Victor is.
I didn't get to see the whole match, but I did get to see some of the highlights, and it looked like he almost got that arm bar and some other things.
He did. He had
almost
submission.
mounted him.
Yeah. He got his back. And you could tell, but Victor has a very classic style, and he kind of played bottom. And I know Nicky Rod is like more of a wrestler and wanted to stand. So I kind of wanted to see Victor stand with them and fucking just basically because he's bigger and stronger.
Yeah.
Victor's 260. He's real strong now. I wanted to see him fucking just pick him up and slam him. And he went for a little bit of a different game plan. So selfishly, I wanted him to fucking beat the shit out of that guy. And that guy's pretty good too. I mean,
he's good.
He's arguably probably, even though Gordon Ryan doesn't like to admit that he's probably one of the best, he's pretty good.
Yeah.
They have a interesting history. I don't know anything about I just know they dislike each other and they talk a lot of shit. And I also know that Craig Jones might be one of the funnier people I've ever seen on social media.
Yeah, he's hilarious.
Yeah,
he's hilarious. I've been struggling because I came from the old world of MMA, right? And wrestling first, and wrestling's, wrestlers don't really talk shit for the most part, hardly ever.
Well, you get the Brand Brothers and, and then, God, what's that kid? AJ Ferrari.
Yeah.
Here in, so Zach Evanish and my buddy Matt, Matt is one of the coaches goes over there and works at the 3F guys here in Austin.
Cool.
And, but yeah, so I know a little bit of Texas wrestling just from those guys. And then,
you go ahead.
No. And so it's, getting into this and seeing the, jiu-jitsu is pretty fascinating because the guys that are wrestlers pick it up pretty fast, but yet there's still a very classical style of jiu-jitsu. I mean, Nicky Rod, I guess, was a wrestler, and does jits now. And then you watch a guy like Victor, who's more steeped in that, Salo and Shanji and that kind of, six blades, very classic, nobody passes guard, diamond and that. And
when did you start training with them?
I started training October of last year.
Okay, awesome. Yeah. That wasn't your first time doing jiu-jitsu, was it?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, no, I fucking hated jiu-jitsu. I thought it was stupid.
How old are you again?
47.
47? Yeah. And you started jiu-jitsu last year?
Yeah.
That's epic.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, that's honestly living and breathing this stuff. The power athlete, and see all the hammers here. You're chiseling away, man.
Well, it was one of those deals where, a SEAL buddy of mine. It even goes back a little farther. So Craig Douglas has a deal called ShivWorks. So Craig came on the podcast with
ShivWorks. ShivWorks. Okay.
SHIV works. Mm-hmm. So he was on the podcast, came with Jeff Gonzalez. So he's ex-law enforcement. He teaches all this combatives. So they come on the podcast and we're going through everything. He's like, man, I'd love for you to come to a course. And I'm like, yeah, sure. I'd love to. I shoot pretty well. I boxed, obviously played in the NFL. I'm pretty good with my hands.
Yeah.
And I was like, dude, I'd love to come to one of your courses. So then 2 days before the course, I don't think anything of it. He calls me. He's like, hey, we're going to be in Austin. I want you to come. And I was like, well, fuck, I have this deal where if I agree to go to something, I usually do it. And I was like, well, I told you I'd come. I got to come. What do I need? He's like, you need 200 rounds. You need a pistol, a cup, and a mouthpiece. And I was like, fuck, I guess we're going to get it on. So I went out to his course, and it was the full spearhead, fighting stuff. And it was 3 days of just basically fucking fighting. And the one problem I ended up having is on my feet, I was fine, but then they put me on my back. And there was a guy who's actually a Lovato guy, one of the starting strength guys, Nick, big dude. He's 6'2", 300, used to be 340. So he's one of those big dudes that's kind of a little jiggly, which when he's on top of you, the kind of that water balloon more so than a bag of rice. So they put me flat on my back and they put basically Nick in side control. And he's a brown belt, and he passed my guard, took the gun, and basically shot me with a sim right there. I still have the scar.
Yeah.
And then got me right here in the belly and killed me. And I don't like to lose. I don't give a fuck what it is, especially it's combatives and fighting and that. And I still, pretty fit. So I left there and I was real fucking mad. And then Scotty Oakes, who's one of the former SEAL, was one of the instructors. It's like, hey, you need to learn some fucking jujitsu. You need to learn to be more comfortable on your back. So for me, and just picture this, as an NFL player, or as a football player, offensive line, the single worst place for me is on my back with somebody on top of me. It means that everything has gone wrong and I got fucking smashed and I probably don't have a job in the next day. So like being on my back with somebody on top was like the worst position for me. So I don't want to ever be there. Now you're putting me there. So he's like, hey, you live in Austin. My buddy's really good at jiu-jitsu. You should meet him. And then he introduced me to Shanji.
Nice.
And so we reached out, but as you know, Brazilians tend to be a little like nonchalant.
Yeah.
And like, oh, you should come. You want to come roll? Like this is before the school opened. So Shanji's like, oh, you should, I have mats in my garage. And I'm like, what the fuck is this guy talking about? Like, I don't know jiu-jitsu. And
you don't know he's a legend, like Hall of Famer.
Well, yeah, I didn't know anything because I didn't know anybody in the jiu-jitsu world. And so I just knew. And then my daughter was swimming. And she got kind of burned out because, swimming was like 5 days a week, 2 hours in the pool. And she's like, I don't want to swim anymore. And I was like, well, do you want to do jiu-jitsu? I met this dude. So I called him, and his school had just opened. So up on HQ. So I drove Jamie up to jiu-jitsu. She liked it. And I just sat there and watched. And then I guess Shanji snapped a picture and put it on his social media. I was like, hey, like with me. And somebody reached out to him. It was like, yo, or something to the effect of like, hey, this NFL guy's, something on social media. And this guy reached out and he's like, yeah, that guy played in the NFL, but like, that's not what people know him for. His company, Power Athlete, and they work with athletes. So then Shanji hit me up and it's like, hey, I have these young fighters. One of them has got an injury. And if we can't figure this out, like, I don't know how far he'll go. And more importantly, I can't help him anymore. Could you help him?
Wow.
So I was like, yeah, bring him over. So he brought him over and, I figured they're professional athletes. Like they should I could not have been more wrong. Nice kids, but they just had never done traditional strength conditioning. Like they didn't understand any of the stuff that I'd spent a lifetime doing. So they came in and, Victor's back. This is right after ADCC 2022. And, Victor's back was pretty banged up. So we started training and he's like, what do you think? And I'm like, well, fuck, these guys probably don't have any money, so they can't pay me. So we'll just do this pro bono and we'll see where it goes. And so then after I started working with them, I thought it was disingenuous that they trained with me and I didn't know anything about what they did. So I was like, I want to try jiu-jitsu. So I started training with them and then ended up earning.
Are you liking it? Loving it?
Yeah, I earned my blue belt.
Nice.
Yeah, I earned my blue belt last year. So it took me like maybe 13 months to get a blue belt.
Yeah.
And so I wish I could go more, but I got 3 kids and I try to sneak classes where I can. I try to go as much as I can. Sometimes at least I go 1 day a week. If I can get 3 or 4, it does better. But I really like it. I really enjoy training with Shanji and Victor and those guys because they're so technical that it appeals to me. And I also like the fact that jiu-jitsu is so personalized. Shanji is always really good whenever he's like, hey, this is your game. This is what you do. And more importantly, your ability to dictate your game. He's like, you're a, fucking top smash and, fucking pass guard and fuck people up. And that appeals to me. It's funny at class because Shanji will show stuff and he'd be like, but John, I want you to do this.
Yeah.
And he's like, there's big, strong dude jujitsu and there's little dude jujitsu. I want you to, so I like that he tailors it for me. And, it also gives me something to train. And it's also neat to see that there's longevity in Power Athlete's training system for the fact that I can go in and be very competitive, especially because I don't think of myself as old.
Yeah, you're not. Yeah. But
yeah, I mean,
that's a time that people stop doing most anything sport wise.
Well, they, I have a theory that the day that you stop sprinting and you stop lifting heavy weights is the day you officially become old.
Really?
Yeah. So it's pretty
I need to start coming and running with you and lifting with you.
Well, so in jits, when we do the warm ups.
Yeah.
So what I always do is I jog and then I sprint the longs and I run as fast as I can. And I always think when I do it, not today, old age, but in the back of the building where it's kind of graded, the hill sprints and the sled pushes and all that. But the ability to humble yourself, empty your cup, learn something new. I was a pro at something, now I'm a beginner.
Yeah.
I think is the greatest form of neuroplasticity.
Yeah.
So, and I love, I'm forever a student.
Yeah.
Years ago, I wrote a blog post called Always Be a White Belt. Not even knowing long before I did this, that I would actually become a white belt again.
Yeah. Black belt is just a white belt who didn't quit.
Yeah.
Right.
And so, but at the end of the day, that moment with Craig Douglas, where that guy passed my guard and killed me, I wasn't interested in jiu-jitsu. I just don't like to lose.
Yeah.
And when that situation arises, if I haven't done what's required of me to defeat it, then I haven't learned anything. And I don't know if you'd said to me, hey, you want jiu-jitsu? I'd be like, no, I'm good. You know, I can throw punches. I'm pretty good. Like I can box, and I did that my whole life. But then you put me in that situation where I was laying on my back and I didn't have the ability to use my hands or, like my fists. So it was very enlightening where I was like, you know, I don't know, like there's some people that become romance and think jiu-jitsu is the end all be all. I still think that in a street fight, you take a guy who's a really skilled boxer and his ability to throw a 1-2 punch, but also you take like a wrestler who gets like a double leg. You have to be able to know how to defend yourself. And it helps to actually kind of know a little bit, and, you know, 1, how to use your hands, 2, how to defend, how to single leg, how to double leg. And if you get it on the bottom, how to fight your way back into position. You know, all those are important. And the only way you ever learn to do it is by doing it.
Yeah.
So
for sure.
And I'm training some of the best dudes in the world. So it'd be kind of douchey if I didn't train with them.
Yeah. Well, those guys are incredible. And I would say, because I trained with Rafael for 6 years, I think. I moved from Colorado. I mean, I left some of the best MMA to train with him because I saw it. I'm like, oh, he's doing MMA now. I'm going to go learn from him because he's going to be world champ. Like nobody's going to beat him. So I moved there and trained. And just so you know, like 12 months to get your blue belt, like that's for their system. That's super fast.
Yeah.
Like normally it's 2, 3, 4 years.
I got a pretty good skill set though.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like,
I know you got the base and you're a pro athlete, so you'll get it, but still from those guys that quick, like that's that's phenomenal for anyone. So congratulations on that. That's just proof of the lifelong student in you and what Power Athlete stands for.
Yeah.
It's all about.
It's been really interesting to see. Like I think one of the, I think there's certain pillars or like different swords you got to die on through your life. And one that I think is mentorship. And I didn't necessarily think a ton about like mentorship when I was young, right? Like I don't like mentor anybody. I mean, you know, I was a good player in this. And then as I kind of got in within Power Athlete, we did a lot of like mentorship, but it was a lot of teaching. Like we go on the road. I taught hundreds of seminars for CrossFit, you know, Power Athlete, you know, methodology. I mean, just kind of teaching, but it was very peripheral. Right, like you know, online is one thing. Like I always think it's interesting too, where people are like, oh, online mentorship programs. I'm like, yeah, I don't know if you can mentor somebody online, like because mentorship happens in between the Zoom calls, you know. And so what's been neat about these kids coming and training with me, and then me also going and training with them, and you know, going to dinner and barbecues and all these things that you just socially do. There's always the opportunity to educate them, and then more importantly, when you see them doing things. Like kind of like my kids in a lot of ways. If I see things where they're fucking up and they're not doing right, I always tell them like, hey, I want you to think about this. Right. You need to focus on this. Like one of the big ones I talk to them is the difference between a hobbyist and a professional. You own a jiu-jitsu school. There's a lot of hobbyists that come in here, but you have to realize beating hobbyists is not the same as beating professionals. Professionals are at a different level. And I think Rafael does a great job of that, making sure that there's pros and guys coming in. Like the guys are up there this week. And whenever they're like, hey, we're not going to train, we got to go to Rafael. I'm like, this is fucking great. Yeah. All right. He's got a great training system. You guys roll, you train like professional athletes. You roll multiple times a day. You have a system. Like that's what you need to be the best. Go there. Like you're not going to hurt my feelings. You don't show up for a week. I send you the workouts anyway. Yeah. So it's like that mindset, and then realizing the way you do everything is the way you do everything. You know, like you have to be a professional. So I think the one thing I've added for those guys is, you know, having been a professional athlete and played in the NFL for a decade, like that level of attention to detail. And then realizing that to be a really good athlete, you have to be a little selfish. But yet being a good parent and being a good mentor requires you to be unselfish. And so realizing for those guys and being like, hey, I'm totally fine if you guys are a little selfish. Like this is your time to shine. It's not about me. So I think it's been really good for me. Having the opportunity to mentor these kids. And I call them kids because, I mean, in reality, I'm like 20 years older than them. And if I had made some different decisions, I could, have kids their age. Right. So it's been a lot of fun. And then it also keeps me young too, because I got young guys to train with. And then, I do go roll with them, and it pisses me off when they beat me. Yeah. And I'm like, these motherfuckers.
Well, I think they're just beautiful humans, man. Like they're good guys. They're really good guys. And I love that about martial arts. I mean, there's some bad apples, but the ones you're around are some fucking great-hearted people.
Yeah, they're good kids. Yeah. And whenever people ask me, I always tell them that. I'm like, hey, they might be great. And whether or not, however, I even say, I don't know how great they are. Like that was, especially when I started, like I just didn't know. But I knew that they were good people. and I was fine to be around them. Like I'll go to fucking battle with people that are, that are loyal, good people. People that are less like that, I don't give a shit how good you are. It's just not worth my time.
Yeah.
And also you don't want to be around people like that.
Yeah.
The world is shitty enough to be around a bunch of fucking overly just bad people. Feels fucking ugly.
Yeah. How did you meet Matt?
Wow. Matt reached out to me, and I don't remember exactly what it was, but he was doing his drifter lifter deal, drifter lifter, where he would like show up and train.
Yeah.
And, he had been,
that was like his YouTube show on.
Yeah. His brother played in the NFL for a short time. So his brother.
I got to meet him. He's a badass.
Yeah. His brother, I think, is like a year or two younger than me. And then, so Matt's brother played, and then I don't know how it all came about, but I remember he reached out, came out and trained with us out in Costa Mesa, and we just kind of became friends after that. And it's been really cool to see his metamorphosis from like both physical and mental, and seeing like where he's gone, from this kind of like thrower. Oh, and then also the Sornex guys probably met him through that, because he was kind of big in the Sornex crew. So. We just became friends. And, when he reached out to me on that motorcycle event, that was pretty neat. That was a fun one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where did you do it? Was it in,
we started in Charleston, South Carolina.
So you did the Florida one.
And I got my motorcycle license 6 days before it. And I had to go through a 3-day course here in Austin, and it was like sleeting. It was, 1 day in class and 2 days outside. Day 2, they sent half the people home. Or they left because it was so fucking cold. And the 3rd day was brutal too. And this was in, I think it was February, maybe March, but I think it was February. I think the trip was in March. So it was the end of February, and it was super cold for some reason. And we started in Charleston, South Carolina. And I had only rode those little bitty bikes.
They're those like little, like 125, 150 cc little bikes.
Yeah. And it was in the rain, and people were putting it down even on the little training course. And I didn't, but then we started there. We went to Savannah, Georgia, and then we went to St. Petersburg, Florida, Orlando, and we did the big NASCAR thing that I think it's Orlando, Daytona.
Yeah, Daytona.
And then we went basically East Coast, West Coast, down Florida a couple times. So we went up to Naples and Marco Island, and then we went on a swamp tour on the airboats, which that was one of the funnest parts because we weren't having to drive and we could turn our brains off and just like through the mangroves. And then we went all the way down to Key West, and it was a blast except for day 2 or 3. I think it was day 3. It was basically a rainstorm with a tornado warning as we went over it's either the Tampa Bridge or Naples Bridge. It's super like it's huge
it's
arch.
a big suspension bridge.
Yeah. That the bridge was shaking. And I could only see maybe 20, 30 feet in front of us because of how much rain was coming down.
Yeah.
Construction sign blew off the bridge basically. Like went into the water or whatever. It had like this flashing thing. And whenever we ended, Matt was shook in a way of like, these are all my friends. Why did we do that? We shouldn't have kept going. We should have pulled over under a bridge or somewhere else. But I was just following everyone and like, okay, keep up. And once we were done with that part, it was like the rest of the trip was so easy. It was so easy. So
we flew into San Francisco, had the most amazing weather, jumped on these bikes, rolled down to like Redwood, like through the redwoods, through the giant sequoias, came all the way down through Cambria, went all the way to like Monterey, cut across, like went over, like came down, which is off of like 99 into like Bakersfield. There's like I can't remember the name of but there was a huge lake in the middle of California that they drained, and they have, that's where they do all the crops, like all that. So, I mean, it's since filled back up when they had all that big rain, but we came back down through that lake bed and like rode all around, then went through LA, and then came back and actually rode up on the backside and came to Palm Springs.
Wow.
And then like, so we ended up there, and then, it was like 5 days, 6 days, like the most amazing riding I've ever done.
Yeah.
And I've lived in California. I grew up in there. I've lived there. I went to Berkeley. So to be able to do that ride, I just never did it. And the opportunity to do it was pretty amazing. I mean, the weather was incredible. Like where we ate was incredible.
Oh yeah.
The guy that had planned the trip was kind of fancied himself as a foodie.
Yeah.
So he had all these like underground spots that we stayed. Like like the food was incredible, and I'll suffer through a lot if the food's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
Me too.
Yeah,
Me too.
Like if I can show up and the food's good, I'll be like, we just had to hike 100 miles, but this place is pretty good. I'm fine with it. So I'll take a lot of shit if the food's good.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. So
I'm trying to think where our favorite spot was to eat there, but we got to eat so good. The only other sketchy spot was driving through Miami because they did not care about motorcycles. Man, from going from not being a motorcycle rider to now, you and me should go riding sometime. I'll go rent a Indian, something like that.
I have no desire to ride a motorcycle in Texas.
Oh, okay.
Because the amount of people that I've seen hit here in Austin on motorcycles, I'm just not going to ride.
Yeah. Well, afterwards, I have such a respect for riders now that I get out of their way. I let them do what they want to do. Like, go ahead.
I watch people fuck with those dudes. I just wave them past. I get over for people, and I'm always happy because I've ridden. I rode all through college.
Yeah.
I rode in Philly. I've always owned bikes. I mean, I used to ride in California. I had a Hayabusa. I used to ride up on the 405 every day.
There's one really cool ride that I did get to do in Texas, and I guess it's a top 10 ride in the U.S. Maybe it's top 50, but it's called Twisted Sisters. Have you heard of that? Twin Sisters, Twisted Sisters.
Is that over towards like 281?
It's kind of close to Uvalde.
Yes, Sister Dale and that whole area over there. We get to go ride.
We did like, I don't know, 200 switchbacks or something like that, or whatever they're called, the U's. And it was beautiful. It was beautiful. And there's two of them. So, and we did it twice each. And so, I don't know, we did 400, 600, 800, something like that.
Did you buy a bike?
I didn't. I went and rented one from Indian here. Actually, they gifted it to me for the weekend, and we just had a blast.
Oh, that's awesome, dude.
Yeah.
Well, if people want to get a hold of you, or more importantly, they want to follow you on social, or want to learn more about how to support the Forgotten, how do they reach out?
The organization's name is Fight for the Forgotten, and you could use fftf.org or fightfortheforgotten.org. Either one will work. And you can follow me on Instagram at the Big Pygmy. So yeah, that's basically how they can follow. Matt is now helping one of our really good friends with the Fight for the Forgotten Instagram. So it's just all spelled out, Fight for the Forgotten, or at Fight for the Forgotten. And if people feel led, if they want to join, like this for me is the most impactful thing I can do with my life. If I had one thing to give to for the rest of my life, it's this project we're working on now. So they can join our Fight Club. It's our monthly giving club. You can do it for $5 a month, $40 a month, whatever you feel like you can do. And we would love that. We would be so jazzed to have people support. We're putting it to good use. So
cool.
Yeah.
We'll plug those in the notes. And dude, thanks for tuning in another episode of Power Athlete Radio. It was awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey there, Power Athlete Nation. Big shout out to all the heavy hitters who stuck around till the final whistle. If you've been soaking in the knowledge bombs and epic tales we've been dropping for free, here's your chance to be a game changer. Swing by klfi.com/powerathlete and toss a few bucks our way to keep the podcast fueled and firing on all cylinders. That's ko-fi.com/powerathlete. Your support makes a difference. See ya.